when there's something weird. And it don't look good. Who you gonna call? It's the Globebusters.
Let's get down to business. I don't got no time to play around. What is this? Must be a circus in town. Shut the shit down.
And now, your hosts, Bob, Xanadu 60.
Just because that isn't my particular opinion does not mean that it's wrong. This is where I get into, the followers, the minions, if you will, the people that are not thinking for themselves. I won't tolerate that BS. And if you want to make videos about me, go right the hell ahead. I don't care.
And Jaren from Jarenism.
Dumbed down, and we've been given false information in school and in our books and in our history. So that's the biggest problem here is we've got a government agency that is stealing money, that is lying through their teeth, that is faking movies and calling them reality, and has convinced 99% of the world that what they're talking about is true.
It's the Globebusters.
And welcome everybody to Globebusters. I am your host, Bob Xanadu60, and today's show we have for you Flat Earth, What is Gravity? And today I'm going to be talking about what some of the other mainstream physicists who are kind of getting away from Einstein's theories are actually postulating gravity to be. And of course, it would be no surprise if I told you that it was an electromagnetic/electrostatic force. And we will be covering that today in depth. And so that should be interesting because this is going to be quite an interesting presentation. And hopefully I will be able to get this across to everyone where you'll be able to walk away from this show and have a decent understanding of what gravity really is, or what the force is that determines up from down might be a more accurate summation of it. And then we can go from there. So, as always, today I have with me my co-host, Jaren from Jarenism. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, fantastic, Bob. Yourself?
Doing pretty good. It's a beautiful fall day in Denver, nice and sunshiny, and just a great day.
We got the same over here, but we got the air show, so I will be on mute most of the time just to not, so you guys don't have to hear the F, whatever, 18s, 15s, 10s, whatever they have flying over my house all day.
Oh, really? What airport are you near?
Well, Salinas Airport, but it's the Salinas Air Show. So
okay.
If it's anything like yesterday, it'd just feel like an earthquake basically all day. We were right next to the Salinas Sports Complex where they have the little flyovers and everything. So they kind of go back and forth. They kind of were doing it all week, but it definitely picks up for the actual show, which is Saturday, Sunday.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Beautiful. All right. So, and also we have today with us my wife, Cammie, who is going to be giving us a little bit of insight into what meteors possibly are. So how are you doing today, sweetheart?
Oh, I'm doing really good. Hope everybody's having a great Sunday. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Oh, you're very... Yeehaw! All right. And also today joining us will be, assuming we get his microphone and his speaker problems fixed, Chris Van Maitre, who is the gentleman that is doing the balloon launch with me. Actually, he's done the great majority of the work so far, and he's done a really wonderful job. Many kudos to him. And Chris, I don't know, can you hear anything yet, or are you still with us? Are you with us yet? Okay, not yet, but he's going to be working on those technical problems, so he'll probably be joining us somewhere in hour 2 when as soon as he gets his audio problems straightened out on his computer. So with that, we'll go ahead and proceed on, and I guess I can just open up. Jaren, did you have anything that you wanted to talk about real quick before I get started on this gravity thing?
No, not off the top of my head, nothing in particular.
Okay, beautiful. Well, I guess what I can do, I'm going to start out by doing a little bit of review on a couple of things so that we can kind of put this whole thing in context. So the first thing I want people to understand, and this may actually be a new concept, and this is something we should have probably talked about at some point in the past. I think I may have, but I honestly don't remember. But being is how we are talking about living on a flat Earth, and that we are basically in an enclosed type of structure of some sort, whether it be it electromagnetic or whether it be a firmament or a combination of both. The idea then comes that if this is truly an electrical type of construct that we are living in, then it has to conform to the properties of what would be called an electrical circuit, okay? And to define an electrical circuit in the very most simplest of terms, an electric circuit would be something that, first of all, would have a power source. And then after the power source, that power source would be powering certain components within the circuit to do some sort of work. If it's an amplifier, then you would have your battery that would supply like a transistor or a tube or whatever that would be designed to take an input signal and amplify it and get an output signal. That would be an idea of a circuit doing work. And all circuits have something in common where they take current, electricity from a battery source or a power source of some kind, and they literally manipulate the current flow that goes through the circuit as they're doing forcing the circuit to do work, whatever work they want it to do. But in its very simplest form, you have the power source for the circuit, you have the components then that actually do the work in the circuit, and then everything comes back to the power source, or it comes back to the battery if you want. Negative pole of the battery going through the circuit, the current flows through the circuit, and then comes back to the positive pole. So that would be basically something that in its very most basic form is a circuit. So another thing that I want to talk about also is what exactly would the battery be in this circuit, okay? And I guess the best way to put that would be to consider the Earth as one pole of the battery, and the Earth would be the negative pole of the battery, or what would be called a cathode, or the emitter of electric current. And the sky, or the heavens above, would be considered the anode, or the positive side of the battery circuit, and it kind of powers everything in between. Now, I know I've talked before about how when I have done certain tower work, and I've been up on a tower and you go up 50, 100 feet, something like that, and you don't really realize it, but you are up there amongst a lot of static electricity when you're on top of a tower. And that static electricity is basically the current flow, if you will, that's happening between the earth ground and the sky. And the reason I know that there's electricity up there and also a difference of potential is because while I'm up on the tower, I could touch something that is actually earth grounded, like an outer shield to an antenna or something like that, and there will be an extremely high voltage, and it will shock you very severely from a static electricity charge. This is why skyscrapers, high-rise buildings have to be grounded, and well, virtually every type of structure has to have ground, earth ground applied to it to keep it at the earth ground potential. Otherwise, you develop all kinds of electrical problems. It will really screw with electronics inside of the building, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in the earth, between the earth and the sky, you basically have, I guess I'm going to call it a basic capacitor. Okay, and so one of the most basic components of electronics is something that's called a capacitor. Everybody's heard of it, but not really a lot of people understand exactly what's going on in a capacitor. Capacitors are able to both store electrical charge and act somewhat as a battery. When the plates on the capacitor are charged, it can actually act as a battery for a limited time to discharge and also provide a secondary power source. But the way that they work is very, very interesting. So as you may or may not know, electrical charges work just like magnetic poles. And if you look at, say, I don't know, the magnetic north pole of a magnet, you could call that positive, okay? It's a polarity. And if you look at a magnetic south pole of a magnet, that would be negative, or, just it would be the south pole. So I'm kind of drawing an analog between north and south pole of a magnet to positive and negative electrical or electrostatic charges on a battery. Okay, so if we take on a capacitor and we take two metal plates and we put them together and we put something in between them, like a piece of paper, something to actually keep them separated physically so that they don't short out and just cause a real high current flow. So put a piece of paper, which would be called a dielectric, in between the positive and the negative plates, and put them very close together. And then we take those plates, just like you're seeing in the diagram here, and we attach them to a battery. Okay. Now, right now, what it's showing is it's showing an air dielectric. It's not really showing anything in between, but just assume these two plates are very close together. So what happens is the positive is attracted to the negative plate, and the negative is attracted to the positive plate. And according to the surface area of each of these plates, you will, depending on how much surface area there is, you will actually start to take on a charge. And this charge is measured in farads or microfarads, typically in capacitors. But what happens is once you apply a battery voltage to these plates, the charges will stay there. They will remain on those plates due to the fact that they're mutually attracting each other. So once we get these plates charged with negative electrons and positive protons, then we can disconnect this battery, and guess what will happen? The charge will remain there. It will remain on the plates, and then you can actually take these charged plates and take them and apply them to some other circuit, and they will act as a battery for a limited time until, of course, they have depleted their charge. So basically, what holds the charge there is the mutual attraction between the two plates of the positive charged ions and the negative charged ions, which would be an excess of electrons or a shortage of electrons. So that's kind of basically what a capacitor is in a nutshell. And this is important because, again, this is what's happening in our construct of the flat Earth. And this is fairly easy demonstrable. I'm not really going to go into all the proofs to show that this is how it works. But if you look at the Earth, and the Earth has the negative charge or an excess of electrons, and then we look at the sky, maybe the firmament, the dome, whatever is up there, and that is holding a positive charge, then what the dielectric would be the air and the space in between those two plates, okay? So needless to say, there is an extremely high charge between the earth ground and the sky anode, whatever it is. I'm not sure what the exact thing is that up there that's positively charged, but it's likely either the firmament or some of the constructs up there themselves. But like I said, it's easy to understand that there definitely is a charge in between the ground and the sky, because we can measure it, we can feel it, we can see it. And in fact, when we have lightning storms, when there's an imbalance of charge, there can also be discharges from the sky down to the ground. And that's basically caused by what would be called a dielectric breakdown. In other words, it overcomes the resistance of the air in between the earth and the sky. So that's the very basic concept behind a capacitor. So keeping that in mind, we will move on and talk about atoms, okay? Now, as most people were taught in school, atoms have three basic constituent components, and they would be for the nucleus, which would be made up of protons and neutrons, but carrying primarily a positive charge in the nucleus. And then orbiting around the nucleus, we have the electrons, which carry a negative charge, all right? So every atom has this, and basically what an atom forms then, because it has a positive and negative charge, is something that's called a dipole electric charge. And dipole simply means two poles, di meaning two and pole meaning pole. So it has a charge of positive on one side and a charge of negative on the other. So all atoms are basically dipoles. And when you take atoms and you start putting them together to form molecules, well, the molecules also will keep that inherent charge. They will keep that inherent dipole characteristic, regardless of the amount of atoms that are in there. They will still have a dipole type of charge. Now, if it's electrically neutral, that means that the protons and the neutrons inside of an atom would match the electrons in an atom, which means that it's electrically neutral. When there is an excess of electrons in an atom, that means that it is charged negatively, and when there is a lack of electrons in that atom, that means that it has a positive dominant charge. Okay, so again, this is basically Science 101. We all took this probably junior high, high school. So I'm going to assume that most people understand the charges, electrostatic charges, that are contained within an atom, okay? So keeping that in mind, we are going to talk a little bit about cymatics, okay? Actually, let's go to platonic solids actually first. Now, when we look at molecules, one interesting thing about molecules is they all seem to take on a very geometric shape, okay? And that geometric shape is basically a composite of atoms that have been arranged geometrically to a structure that virtually always comes back to one of 5 what's called platonic solids, okay? And the platonic solids are at base the tetrahedron, the octahedron, the cube, the icosahedron, and the dodecahedron. So there you go. That's basically looking at the 5 basic shapes of the platonic solids. So right away we can see that there is a connection in molecules and the platonic solids. And actually, let me go ahead and bring up just images of molecules just so we can kind of see this. All right, so if we look at these molecules, again, they all go back to a base form that relates directly to the platonic solids. This is nature's geometry, if you will. The platonic solids virtually make up every single thing in our existence. They are at the core geometric structure of everything in our existence, and the reason for that is because they are at the core of all molecules. And even atomic structure it must comply with these platonic solid structures at base, okay? So going from the molecules, we can also generate these platonic solids when we look at cymatic frequencies, okay? And let me find this really quick. Hang on just a sec. I should have had this organized a little bit better. So, oh wow, where did that go? All right, well, let me just pull one up. Let me just pull up a cymatic video really quick, because obviously I closed it and I wasn't doing a very good job there. So let's just go to YouTube and we'll type in cymatics. And I have a feeling it's going to be there anyway on one of my tabs. So let's look at cymatics, and let's look at, here we go, amazing resonance experiment. All right, so basically what we're looking at here is a metal plate, and many people have seen this before in cymatics demonstrations. And all we're doing to this metal plate is actually mounted on top of a loudspeaker, okay? And the loudspeaker is then connected to a tone generator or a signal generator, which basically just gives a sinusoidal waveform, and we can vary the frequency from 0 hertz to, you know, whatever we want to. So if we put a material on this plate and we vibrate it at certain frequencies, all of a sudden we start seeing patterns emerge. Well, that's very interesting. And every time we change the frequency or go to different harmonics of a certain frequency, and the higher and higher we go, we get a more and more complex pattern of cymatics. Okay, so now we're going to go to 2041. And basically, if you look at these, now we're looking at this on a two-dimensional scale. This can also be done three-dimensionally. And the interesting thing about cymatics is that, once again, these cymatic patterns that we are seeing here conform very definitely to going back to the Platonic solids. Okay, now again, this is two-dimensional representation, whereas the cymatic or the Platonic solids are actually three-dimensional structures. But this is just a very simple example of it. And there are many videos on YouTube that show three-dimensional cymatic patterns. So again, this is nothing new. In fact, we mirrored a video from Ephesians 6:12 that shows that was a wonderful demonstration of cymatics. So you can check that out on our channel also. So basically, the point that I'm trying to make here is that cymatics and the Platonic solids and the structure of an atom and the structure of molecules are all created by vibration, okay? And vibration is akin to frequency or oscillations, all right? So what is it then that causes these patterns when you vibrate a plate like this? Why do they do this? And the answer to that is, and this gets a little bit complex, but the answer is when you are putting waveforms across the plate, what it does is it causes different pressure zones on the plate that will repel and attract this material that is on the plate, all right? And it gets a little complex to interpolate it from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions, but suffice it to say you're seeing the end result. And I'm not going to go into exactly how all that works because frankly, that would be very complex mathematically and very, very difficult to explain. So just, you're just gonna have to kind of take my word for it that what you're seeing is real, and these pressures are caused by vibration or just simply frequencies of things being vibrated. Okay, that's all that's happening here. Well, nature works in precisely the same way, all right? So everything in existence is brought up from vibration, okay? And depending on the complexity of the vibrational frequency, and it can be, you know, obviously something much more than a simple sine wave pattern. It can have all kinds of information that's encoded in these vibrational patterns. And so everything in nature, depending on what type of waveform you put to it, then arises out of these magnetic, or out of these cymatic patterns. Actually, let me show you another good one here. This is actually kind of more of a 3-dimensional thing. Okay, this is a 2-dimension. This is good. I'm sure many people have seen this. And basically all this is Lyco powder. Again, and they're just vibrating in certain ways. And you can see, depending on how you modulate the wave that is vibrating things, you can come up with some very interesting patterns. This looks like a dragonfly. They have other things in here that will vibrate and actually look like a circulatory system. They start emulating living organisms. It's really, really super interesting to see this kind of stuff at work. This right here looks like, you know, some sort of a circulatory system. And this is nothing more than powder vibrating with a complex waveform that's being, you know, put to it. And again, all of these go back, everything that we're seeing here is based off of these 5 Platonic solids. All right, and it's just a matter of pressure differential. Here's another interesting one. This almost looks like a spinal column, a human spine, or it could be some other type of living organism. But needless to say, this is what creation is, and it goes back, once again, to Platonic solids. So with that in back pocket. Let's go to. I'm sorry. Let's go back to the basic 5 Platonic solids. Okay, now in Genesis, in the Bible, there is during the creation story. Basically, God speaks everything into existence with the Word of God, and what that is in the Bible is it's simply a metaphor for a sound, a tone, okay, or a complex frequencies of tones. In other words, the voice of God, or when God speaks, God is the vibrational source for all of creation, okay? And one of the things that I find very interesting about that biblically is when you take all of these Platonic solids and you combine them together, you get what is called a Metatron's cube. And I'm sure that most of you who have studied the Bible will realize that who is the voice of God, and that would be Metatron. So isn't it interesting that we have Metatron and Metatron's cube, which encompasses all of the Platonic solids, representing the voice of God. So I find that very, very interesting, and it also seems to wash very well when you look at how things are constructed and look at molecular patterns. As above, so below. This vibrational pattern starts at the very basic electron, goes through the atom, goes through the molecule into physical matter structures, crystals, all kinds of stuff like this, all the way up to stars and planets and how everything is actually manifested. And of course, we have sorry about that. We have a good video here by Ashley Webster, and many people have also seen this, where we're taking pictures of the stars and the planets, and we can see very clearly that there is, this isn't a good example, but there's very clearly cymatic and Platonic solid vibratory patterns in the stars themselves. Okay, once again, as above, so below.
Hey Bob, I'm wondering how much have you looked into James Clerk Maxwell's different papers he wrote in the mid 1800s that seem to bring this all to light with his equations and on electromagnetism, and then I know that it went away because of relativity, but have you looked at his book to go back and erase relativity and see how close he was? Because I know he mentioned dipoles and
Yes.
the electromagnetic force as well.
James Clerk Maxwell was right on the money. He, along with many other great physicists and electrical engineers, absolutely believed in the ether. And of course, that's where Einstein took a massive wrong turn. And I think it was intentional too. And I think that Einstein was basically brought forward as the new voice of the of science to basically derail it and to take it off somewhere else. Einstein, of course, his theory of relativity eliminated the ether. And the ether is nothing more than the medium in which light propagates, or any type of EM wave propagates. Okay, so yeah, James Clerk Maxwell and Heaviside, Oliver Heaviside, all these physicists were in stark contrast to what Einstein, proposed, and they were highly critical of Einstein's theories, or I should say Einstein's wife's theories, because they knew that basically they were nonsense, and things simply could not propagate unless they had a medium to propagate through. So that's one of the biggest problems that Einstein has. And yes, James Clerk Maxwell was absolutely on the same page as all of these other people that have since taken back seats to the Einstein theory, including Tesla. Of course, we all know what Tesla thought of Einstein, but it wasn't only Tesla. It was several other people, and Clerk Maxwell was definitely one of them.
Well, one of our biggest problems is just the idea of space being infinite and not, closed, because we know it has to be closed. It has to be, it has outer edges, and that's the only way the ether can exist. And so that's why he came up with the idea of the infinite, ever-expanding space, because then you can't have it filled with ether. So, that's where we all went drastically downhill. It just becomes a mess after that. And I know Clark Maxwell and even Newton believed in a static space.
Very much so.
Yeah, but then they, with Einstein, which by the way, I found out Einstein means one rock. Isn't that funny?
One stone, yes, one rock. I think that's a mock to people, to be honest with you. It makes you wonder.
Might be on. But when they invented space, and they say it also can be closed, but closed just means if you go one direction, that you'll eventually, waka, Pac-Man yourself back in the other side. So, that we know is just outrageous. And even all their tests are showing everything is right in front of them. I just don't get why it's so hard for them to see what they're looking at. When they're talking about the cosmic microwave background, they're basically saying that they're seeing an edge, an end, which if there's an end to space, then it's probably filled with ether, which is the dark energy, dark matter, call whatever you want. It's ether.
Right. It is the medium that is being vibrated, if you will, that actually brings that matter arises out of. Not only matter, but electromagnetic waves, light, RF frequencies, microwave, gamma ray, everything literally arises out of the ether. And Cami found something really interesting about the Greek god ether. His description was the ether was the, I can't read that, Cami. Why don't you here, put your microphone down in front of you, unmute yourself, and go ahead and read it. And Cami's going to read about who the god ether was. Okay, go ahead, Cami. All right, and she's unmuting. Go ahead.
All right, and let's find him again. Okay, Ether was one of the primordial deities in Greek mythology, the son of primordial deity Erebus, which is darkness, and Nyx, which is night, or according to Orphic hymns, Cronus, which was time, and Anarchy, which was necessity. So he was either born of darkness and night or time and necessity. He was the brother of Hemera, which is day, and according to some sources, he fathered Gaia, which is earth, Thalassa, sea, and Uranus, the heavens. He was the personification of the upper air that only gods breathe, as opposed to the normal air breathed by the mortals. The air encircling the mortal world was called chaos, while the underworld where the dead dwelled was enveloped in Erebus, the mist of darkness.
See, sorry, I got on mute there. So basically, that's the quote-unquote mythology behind the god ether. And, that was basically what the gods breathed, was ether. And so Einstein, in his infinite non-wisdom, eliminated this medium. And in doing so, he basically invalidated not only his own theories ultimately later on, but of course he would have invalidated the work of Heaviside and Clerk Maxwell, Tesla, yada, yada, yada. And, obviously there's huge problems with that, because when he did that, that is what allowed mathematicians to then go forward and go completely crazy with this mathematical construct of the universe, which they claim that their equations prove everything, and yet math doesn't prove anything. Math simply describes, and that's one of the greatest problems that modern science has with Einsteinian physics. It's all but debunked at this point. And I think many physicists are catching on to this, not the least of which is a physicist which I'm going to be highlighting today by the name of Wallace Thornhill. And Wal Thornhill basically is a physicist in Australia. He is the leading proponent of, a leading physicist, I should say, of the Thunderbolts project, which you're seeing here. And this is a picture of Wal here on the left-hand side. And he talks about several things about, the problems with Einstein. And also this particular lecture is called The Long Path to Understanding Gravity. Now this video is basically the core of where I got a lot of my source material that I will be presenting today on this. I'm going to play parts of this video. I'm going to explain it in further detail, and then I'm going to kind of add to the parts where he is not, I'm kind of going to fill in the blanks in between. So, yeah. So again, a lot of physicists, and then Jaron, you mentioned a physicist earlier. What was his name again that you were talking about?
George Ellis.
George Ellis.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is also another one that's obviously seeing the problem with Einsteinian physics and sees the problem where mathematics has completely run amok and taken over classical physics. And of course, classical physics is the true scientific methodology where you hypothesize, you develop experiments, you test, you predict, and then you try and falsify it. And this is what, unfortunately, physicists have gotten away from today in favor of writing down all these abstract equations in mathematics that really have nothing to do with reality whatsoever. They want us to be in a complete mathematical construct, and in doing so, they are allowed then to make up other mathematical constructs to explain this lack of ether, like black holes and dark energy and all this kind of stuff that none of us can measure or witness or anything like that. It's absolutely an abstract, like the creation of neutrinos and some of these quarks and stuff like that, subatomic particles, which again, they tell us that we can't see because they're covered up by the nucleus of the atoms. Again, so they're always coming up and saying that there's all this matter and objects that we cannot see, we cannot detect, but they're saying, well, yeah, that's because it's a integral part of the nucleus of an atom, which is just, BS.
Here's a couple quick quotes on that subject. Okay. Albert Einstein said, "Since the mathematicians invaded relativity, I do not understand it myself anymore." It's one thing. The other thing was Bertrand Russell said, "Physics is mathematical not because we know so much about the physical world, but because we know so little." So very interesting there.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
Richard Feynman said, "The glory of mathematics is that you don't have to say what you're talking about."
That's right. And Richard Feynman also said, "No model of gravity other than the mathematical form exists," which is very interesting. And Walt Thornhill also said something to the effect of, "We have moved far away from classical physics, experiments, observation, testing of ideas, verification by experiments, in favor of mathematics." And then he says, "Mathematics isn't physics. It is not physics. It's just math. It's just numbers, which are an abstract concept, essentially."
I can't remember who said this, but somebody did say, "Science is a wonderful thing if one does not have to earn one's living at it," which I think is also a huge deal, that these guys will just, they'll keep putting forth the wrong answers and keep doing what they can to keep their jobs and keep their name clean.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that's the way it is too. I mean, you can't get a grant to, do the kind of work that Tesla was doing because, again, that would bring us back to the electrical model of the universe, and that's what the Thunderbolts project is all about. And their theories make a hell of a lot more sense than Einsteinian theories and philosophies because they are completely demonstrable in the lab. The electric universe theory deals with, obviously, the electrical phenomenon in the universe, which is directly related to magnetism. It deals with plasma physics, charged gas and stuff like that. Again, all of this stuff is stuff that is demonstrable in a laboratory, and we are, we're just completely getting away from that. And again, I think that is quite intentional. And as Walt Thornhill says, that if we would have stayed on that path of more conventional classical physics, we would probably be hundreds of years more advanced in physics than we are now. And I totally agree with that 100%.
Yeah, especially if you look at just the last 100 years, what's gone on. It's just been a complete and total retardation, for lack of a better word, of the learning process. And I mean, all forces of nature are electromagnetic forces. So why we just can't see that and put those forward rather than be handcuffed by the whole idea of gravity and the whole idea of relativity when they clearly are not, it's not something that can be tested. It's crazy.
Yes, absolutely true. So let me check and just see. Chris, are you, can you hear us yet, or are you able to talk yet? Hello, Chris. Hello, Chris. Okay. We do not hear you, Chris. I don't know if you are there or not. You can also use the chat on the right-hand side to communicate with us, but obviously you're either not hearing us or we are not hearing you, one of the two. But I do not show your microphone is muted, so I don't know what kind of problems you got going on there. So hopefully you'll get it fixed here fairly soon. So, all right, so let's get back to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a couple of these clips here in a minute. But the first thing I want to talk about, and as Walt Thornhill is talking about, is a guy named Fritz London. Okay, and Fritz London basically, let me go back to my notes here. And Fritz London is the physicist that a phenomenon called the London force, or the van der Waals dispersion force, was named after. And basically what these are, the van der Waals dispersion force, the London force, is something that causes gas molecules to condense into liquids and solids. Okay, now they say that the reason this happens is as gases either cool or are kind of being drawn together. It does this because of a distortion of electrically neutral atoms, and we'll talk about this distortion in a minute. So I'm going to play a couple minutes here of Walt Thornhill's speech, and this is open source, so anybody can play it. So we shouldn't have any problems with copyright on this. So let me go ahead and play this, and let's listen to Walt Thornhill here for just a minute.
And your choice of giant, because he may be facing the wrong way. These are the people who should be in our science education curricula. Fritz London was a philosopher of science, a visionary logician and dedicated theoretician. In 1930, Fritz London explained the weak attractive dipole electric bonding force between atoms, known as the van der Waals dispersion force, or it was named after him also as the London force, which causes gas molecules to condense and form liquids and solids. In other words, planets and you and I and everything in the visible universe. The London force originates in oscillating electric dipoles caused by slight distortion of otherwise electrically neutral atoms. So here we're talking about the kind of stuff that the Earth and the planets and the sun that are made up of. The tiny electric dipoles arise because the charges within the atom are separated, as shown in the last slide, by effectively a huge distance.
Okay, now what Walt is talking about here when he's talking about the last slide is, if any of you have ever seen the movie What the Bleep Do We Know, it gives a really good description of kind of the geometry of an atom and how much actual empty space there is in a typical atom. So to put it in a scale perspective, if we were to take a, let's say a ping pong ball and put it in the middle of a football field, okay, and have the ping pong ball represent the nucleus of an atom, which of course again is comprised of protons and neutrons, and then we take the electron that would be orbiting around the center part, or the nucleus of the atom, and in scale, and we put it about, I don't know, 5 miles outside of that football field, and also reduced it down to the size of a BB, okay? That would be an approximate scale of what an atom would be like if we were to blow it up to where we could actually observe what it looks like on a larger scale. So as you can imagine, obviously, between that ping pong ball and that BB, representing the core nucleus of the atom and the outer, all the way out to the valence ring, the outer electron ring of an atom, there's a huge amount of absolutely empty space. So when he's talking about this slight distortion of electrically neutral atoms, what he's talking about is when the electron is orbiting around the nucleus of the atom, there is only one particular instant where that atom is shielded from the Earth electrostatic influence. I mean, it's just a very brief instant. And when it does shield it from the Earth's influence, it causes a slight imbalance, okay, or a slight distortion, a slight pressure. And this is really what it all comes down to. Electromagnetic fields and gravitational fields and energy in atoms all have to do with the distortion that's being created inside of atoms, or the pressures. Kind of look at it as like a balloon filled with water. And if you press on one side of the balloon still keeps its integrity, but it distorts everything. And it is that distortion, that pressure, the distortion, that literally is representative of the energy that's inside of the atom. Okay, so we won't dwell on that too much. So let me go ahead and move forward just a bit on this with Paul.
The electric dipoles resonate, as I said, they sort of tune into each other and orbit in such a way that they combine. Okay,
so when he's saying that they resonate and they sort of tune into each other, what that means is, let me define what resonance is. So if you have two frequencies and you have, say, one frequency at 1,000 hertz or 1,000 cycles per second, and you have another frequency at 1,500 cycles per second or 1,500 hertz, those two frequencies have differences and they have similarities, okay? And when they hit their similarities, meaning they will reach peaks of their sinusoidal waveform at the same time, or points along the 0 point at the same time, that's when they're starting to approach a condition of resonance. However, a 1,500 hertz signal and a 1,000 hertz signal cannot be resonant because they're two different frequencies. Resonance happens when you have a match in frequency, either two frequencies or a frequency inside of a chamber that would be resonant to a frequency. So if you had 2,000 hertz signals, they would basically be resonant with each other or commensurate with each other, in that their sinusoidal waveforms become additive, and then all of a sudden there is an increase in energy or increase in voltage, if you will. So as I've talked about before, in an electrical circuit, maximum power transfer happens in an electrical circuit when it reaches a condition of resonance, okay? So what he's talking about in these electric dipoles are just what I was talking about earlier when we are looking at atomic constructs and molecular constructs. Whatever the complexity of the molecular construct is, it still ultimately has a positive side to it electrostatically and a negative side to it electrostatically, okay? So that in and of itself is called a dipole. So it doesn't matter how complex the molecule is, it's a dipole. And of course, as you know, we are made up of molecules, which means that there's going to be a whole bunch of dipoles that are within each and every one of us. So, all right, let me go ahead and let him talk a little bit more about this, and then I'll explain a little more.
It's always attractive, just like gravity. So there's a clue. So, in fact, Fritz London said that it seems that gravity may be this kind of interaction between neutral matter. So it seems that the clue about the real nature of gravity has been available to chemists who are not interested in gravity, and unavailable to astrophysicists who are not concerned with physical chemistry or electricity. Obviously, gravity has the distinction of being much, much weaker than the force between atoms, the London force. But that should be a clue. We are bonded to the Earth by a similar but far weaker version of the London force between atoms.
Okay. And then, of course, he says after that, and here we get into the idea of repeated patterns in the electric universe, meaning the repeated patterns is that everything has charge from the atomic level all the way up to the galactic or universal level. And in our little flat Earth model here, again, we have the charge of the Earth being primarily negative and the heavens being the anode or primarily positive. So what does all this have to do with gravity? Well, this is where we're going with this. When you have, as many of you have seen, I'm going to go to a little demonstration here. Let me see if I can find it here. Let's get rid of that. That's not it. That is close to that, something like that. You know, and I had a hard time actually finding this particular video, but I do have these two. But if any of you have ever seen the video where I think Theoria does it, where he takes a bunch of magnets, right? And he has like little magnetic BBs, and he will roll them into a plate. And what they will do is they will start forming all by themselves, by nature of their dipole magnetic effect, they will start forming into geometric patterns of equilibrium, okay? And it's very interesting because you sit there and BBs being a little spherical and the BBs representing atoms, all of them will have a positive and a negative or a north and south pole on them magnetically, and atoms work precisely the same way. So it's interesting then that you can take and form these little BBs into icosahedrons, dodecahedrons, all of the platonic solids. This particular one was done with 8,124 ball magnets, and it made a giant gold molecule or a model representation of it. And the reason I use this is because this is a beautiful representation of what's actually happening if we look at a gold molecule and we were looking at the atoms, the atomic structure within it, and each of those atoms, instead of having a north and south magnetic pole, they have a positive and negative electrostatic charge. Remember, electromagnetism and electrostatic are virtually, you know, two peas in a pod. They're one and the same force. There are very minute differences, but wherever you have electricity, you have magnetism. Wherever you have magnetism, you have electricity. They are inseparable. So this is a very good demonstration to see how you can form these charged particles into these platonic solids. And again, by the very nature of the universe, everything forms this way. All right. So basically, if you think back, and I hope some of you have seen this, and if not, maybe somebody can dig up another video that actually shows Theoria doing this, where the BBs will go in and automatically start forming into these patterns just by rolling them into a plate. Here's another one where a guy is basically forming it into a buckyball, which was a construct that was created by Buckminster Fuller and named after Buckminster Fuller. And a buckyball is basically kind of like a soccer ball, as you can see. So again, with BBs, we can emulate this atomic behavior, okay? So basically, what's happening then is when you start forming these molecules out of these individual atoms, and then these molecules then make constructs like us, like our houses, our cars, everything that has any physical attribute to it at all. It's all made up of these little atomic and molecular constructs that are, by their very nature, dipoles, okay? So, and I am getting to the point of how this comes to gravity, and this is really super interesting. So let me go back to wall. And right there. And I think this is where we're going to go.
Here
just
we
a sec.
get into the idea of repeated patterns in the electric universe. So like gravity, the London force is always attractive and operates between electrically neutral atoms and molecules. Very much like gravity. So we talk about matter and mass. So the second step on the path to discovery about what gravity really is to look at the particles that make up matter. Newton's law multiplies the masses of two objects together, so the first requirement is to define what is meant by mass. The electron is defined as a fundamental indivisible particle, but it must be a composite of smaller orbiting charged particles, shown here in blue.
And again, this goes back to the fractal nature of everything, as above, so below. Even the smallest indivisible particles has these subatomic particles that are mimicking essentially the very behavior of the atom that it's a part of the construct of.
To store energy. The energy is stored by the motion of those charged particles with respect to one another, and also with respect to all other particles in the universe. The same goes for all subatomic particles. Doesn't matter what it is, including the neutrino. The neutrino also is included. And there was a report that I got.
Okay, so we'll stop there. So what Wall is saying here then is that here we are, part of the earth. We are of the earth, we were born from the earth, and we are intrinsically linked to it, okay? And what's happening is, just like dipoles, if you take magnets, all right, and I wish I had a demonstration of this also, but imagine in your mind if you take a string of magnets, okay, and you jumble them all up, and basically, if you just kind of vibrate them a little bit, what they will do is they will align themselves automatically north, south, north, south, north, south, north, south, north, south. And then you will have a string of magnets that have all attached themselves together, with ultimately the top part of the magnet being north, making one gigantic magnet, and the bottom part of the magnet being south, okay? And we're going to call that south the negative side of the electrical charge. So just like the magnets, the molecules and atoms will essentially, via this dipole effect that Wall is talking here, align themselves with respect to the earth as earth ground or the negative charge, okay? So what that means is that we have the base attractor, which would be ground earth, the earth ground, and then we have the anode of the circuit, of course, which would be positive or would be the sky or the heavens, okay? So what he's basically saying here is that because of the fact that we get this alignment of charge that sources from the earth, this is the very thing that determines what is up and what is down, okay? Everything is going to be drawn down towards the earth primarily, and this is basically the London force, or a variation of the London force that behaves very similar to gravity. Why? Because the London force only is an attractive force. It is not a repulsive force, okay? Just like the north-south, north-south, north-south alignment of dipoles, this is purely an attractive force, okay? So that, in a nutshell, is basically where we're getting the idea of gravity, because we are part of this electrostatic charge that bases out of the earth. Then we are going to be attracted by a very, very mild and weak electrostatic force, or something that is like this London force or van der Waals dispersion force. And that is indeed what we are calling gravity. Now, the interesting thing about this, what that means then is that if you change the charge of the surface of the earth, it's also going to change the properties of the attractive properties on all of these little electric dipoles, which make up molecules and us and our cars and our airplanes and our chemistry and everything. So essentially what's happening then is, if you change the electrostatic characteristics charge of the earth, that's going to affect what we are calling gravity. And in fact, we know that's true because gravity is not a constant. They tell you big G is a constant, but it is not. In fact, it varies wildly. When you go up in the air and you get away from Earth, and even NASA will admit to this, where the alleged ISS is, they say that gravity is 95% of what it is on Earth. Well, that may or may not be true, but I would tend to believe that it probably is, because you are at a fairly great distance away from Earth ground. Conversely, when they have done gravitational tests in mines, okay, when they go down mine shafts, also there is another massive distortion in gravity, where all of a sudden it's no longer 9.8 meters per squared. It definitely starts changing either up and down, and all of this is commensurate with the charge that is in the Earth itself. Now, a couple weeks ago, I talked about some of these gravity anomalous places, okay? And I also noted that most of those gravitationally anomalous places were close to magnetic hills, okay? And again, remember, magnetism and electrostatic charge are one and the same. They're components of each other. So what's basically happening in these places that actually are the legitimate anomalous gravity sites is that the charge of the surface of the Earth has varied. In other words, the potential of Earth ground has become either more negative or less negative, which then affects this London force, or the similarity to London force, which is this weak electrostatic attractive force. So again, depending on where you go on Earth, we're going to have different variations on gravity. And even mainstream science will admit this reluctantly, that there are differences in gravitational areas around Earth. However, they completely minimize it and take it down to like 12 decimal points or something like that and say, it's really nothing. But in fact, in the large scheme of things, you can actually, if you have enough of a charge differential, then what's going to happen is you can literally negate the greatest part of a gravitational force based on charge alone, okay? So, and again, when you go up in the air, if you go up in the air 30,000 feet and you start taking gravitational measurements up there, and we know this is an absolute fact, gravity actually is reduced. Why? Because you have come away from the electrical potential of Earth ground and that charge. So here's one of the biggest problems with that. Since we now know that gravity is actually an electrostatic effect, and this is basically what's determining up from down and why things fall down instead of up, what science has done is they have taken this 9.8 meters per second squared, and they have said, well, this is the gravitational constant for everything in the universe, which is unbelievably folly. And they have then taken this and they've applied it to everything in the universe, and this is where they get a lot of their completely faulty mathematics and derivatives, where they make their predictions. And of course, because of the fact they're using a standard prediction or a standard fixed constant, then all of a sudden they start running into problems when they observe things that they can't explain that seem to be defying the laws of gravity. And comets are a very good example of that. They say that comets seem to have some sort of an anti-gravity type of effect. Well, that's probably because the comet A has charge, a high degree of charge, and secondly, because they are applying the incorrect quote-unquote gravitational constant to the comet, along with everything else. So this is where science and physics and mathematics have kind of gone wrong in making these assumptions about certain speeds. They've done, or certain constants. They've also done the same thing about the speed of light. We know for a fact that the speed of light is not a constant. In fact, every time they measure it, it's different. And sometimes it's very dramatically different. And of course, they talk about free space in a vacuum. Well, it doesn't matter if it's in a vacuum or not, because, well, it does. I take that back. But they're saying that the ether doesn't exist, when in fact that the ether actually does, and it is what light propagates through in the atmosphere, or you could say in a free space condition, okay? But we all know that the speed of light changes as soon as you change the medium that it is navigating through. In other words, when you have light propagating through our atmosphere, well, its direction is altered by refraction. When it goes through water, it's dramatically altered by heavy refraction and heavily drawn down. So, and the same thing goes for any other type of medium that would affect the electromagnetic wave of gravity itself. So this is another place that science has gone wrong by calling things constants that are not constants, and are demonstrably not constants. So again, and the whole point of this, like I said, is getting back to, you know, what gravity is. And again, to kind of summarize it for you, it's everything has a dipole effect. All molecules have a dipole effect that are based from the Earth, sourced from the Earth as the cathode, and then go to the sky as the anode. As you move away from the Earth, the electrostatic charge then changes with respect to the anode and also the cathode at whatever point you are at in between. Again, when I'm up on my tower and, you know, I'm only 50 feet up in the ground, I can easily get a 200 volt difference of potential between where I am and the ground, and it hurts. Okay, so you can only imagine what kind of difference of potential there must be in this electric earth circuit that we're talking between the ground and actually the sky. So is this making sense to you so far, Jaron? Am I missing anything, or do you have any questions?
Nope, making sense to me.
Making sense
Okay.
to me too.
Hey.
Oh, Chris, yay! Awesome. Glad you. How you doing, Chris? I'm glad you fixed your
Good.
problems.
Yeah, I finally
All right.
got it figured out.
Okay, so let me then. Oh boy.
Yesterday.
Let me go and actually find another part here. So, and actually, I guess I really don't have to go through this because I just wanted to get the basics of what it is, and I will elaborate on it at a point, but I know that sometimes I can get really descriptive and that will kind of lose people's attention. But suffice it to say that, and I will put this video in the show notes because Wall does a much better job of explaining it than I do. However, just keep in mind the basic premises that I taught you, in that the Earth is a circuit, that all molecules are dipoles, ultimately, as are all atoms. All structures are dipoles. You know, I'm one great big dipole. You know, everything is a dipole effect, okay? And therefore, it is subject to the electrostatic conditions of what we are calling gravity. And this gravity can be altered. And that's why, you know, gyroscopes will sort of negate the force of gravity. Well, not sort of, they absolutely do negate the force of gravity. And Wall actually explains that in this particular video. So this is something I'm going to put in the show notes, and I will elaborate on it in future episodes because I can see I've taken an hour explaining this. And I appreciate everybody's patience with this. But this video is absolutely a gold mine of information. And Wal Thornhill is one of the, you know, brightest minds in physics today, I believe. And there's a lot of things that are absolutely defined in here. So I hope that kind of covers it for people. So what is gravity? It's an electrostatic manifestation. It has nothing to do with, you know, woo-woo, action at a distance, you know, things that are billions of light years away that are collapsing. It also annihilates the idea of black holes, which do not exist. And, you know, it's just nonsense. So, and then one other thing I wanted to say just before I get out of this is there is a video by, where is it? Oh, crap. I hope I just didn't do the wrong one. That's okay. I don't know what I do with that. God, I hate it when I do that. I just have too many tabs open. That's my problem. Okay, so anyway, so we'll leave it at there. But yeah, keep those basics in mind when you watch this video. And Wal does a wonderful job of explaining this. And it leaves absolutely no doubt in your mind whatsoever that gravity is an electrostatic effect, and it has nothing to do with these you know, masses and stuff like this. And actually, one other thing that he did mention in this video, which I found very interesting, is that when you apply a charge to anything, its mass will effectively change, and they have just recently discovered this apparently. So that is very telling in and of itself. So you have any ordinary object and you apply a static charge to it, and all of a sudden, gravity, quote unquote, acts differently towards it. And in fact, sometimes it absolutely negates the gravity. And we have seen that many times in magnetic demonstrations where we're seeing the magnets, which are dipped in liquid nitrogen, made extremely cold, and which then goes into what's called a quantum locking effect, where things are actually locked in free space. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say on that. So, Chris,
Yes.
I guess we can talk to you a little bit about the project of the balloon, which is coming up in 5 days, which is going to be pretty cool. And you have got pretty much everything assembled. Chris sent me a picture of the construct. And Chris, I have to ask you about that. I mean, I know you said that you were going to put something inside of it, like hand warmers or something like that, to keep the components warm. Because one of the biggest problems that people have with launching these balloons, when they get up to these 100,000 foot altitudes, it's really cold up there. And unfortunately, when you expose a battery to extreme cold temperatures, it changes the chemical composition of the battery and it can discharge it very rapidly. So obviously, it is necessary to keep the components, especially the batteries, warm inside of it. And I did notice that you used, I don't know, it looks somewhat like what, a cake Tupperware or something? What is that?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's a cake holder.
Okay. And I've noticed, I'm curious as to why you decided to go with that versus what most people seem to do, and they use these styrofoam coolers for insulation. Was there a particular reason you went with that, or?
Yeah, with coolers, most people are sending them up during the daytime, and
Right.
we want cameras that are angled straight up. So I figured something with round edges would accommodate the cameras pointing in at an angle instead of having a square box trying to figure out how to mount the cameras at an angle.
Right. Okay. All right. I get that. So are the cameras actually mounted in there as straight up, or are they at a slight angle? Because obviously we've got the balloon that's going to be straight up directly above it.
No, they're at an angle. I'm guessing. Well, and I can change that. I've got it where we can change it from whatever angle we want it. I think I've got it about 60 degrees for the ones that are going to be pointed doing the video in the stars.
Okay. And so many people don't know the problems that you went through in trying to obtain cameras. Okay, we've actually gone through, what, 3 sets of cameras. Now we're on the 3rd set finally, because the previous couple cameras that you used, when you tested them, they basically had extremely poor light gathering capabilities, and you basically didn't see any stars, right?
Right. And I've probably tried 4 or 5 cameras. Anybody needs to know about cameras, I've tried them all. Short, fat, tall, I've tried them all. And the deal is, even with like the P900 and your higher end cameras, when you switch it over to video, it cuts the IOS down to 6400. And you need the IOS, the light gathering ability of a camera, to be around anywhere from 12,500 almost to 30,000 to capture the stars. So almost any camera, even the high-end cameras, when you flip it over to video, you only have an ability to go up to like 6,400 IOS unless you get into the real expensive high-end cameras.
Oh, okay. So ultimately, what kind of camera did we wind up getting? What was the brand name and model? Do you have that handy by any chance?
Yes, it's from Luna Optics, and it's a LN DM50 HRSD high resolution night vision recorder. And basically, it's kind of like a hybrid camera. We're not going to run it in night vision mode. We're going to run it in regular video mode. Yeah, you got it up there on the screen now. We're going to run it in regular video mode, but this camera has a dial on it where you can, when you flip it over to video, you can crank the IOS up on it, or the light ability, or the light gathering ability. You can crank it way up so that we can get the stars on video. So it's kind of a hybrid video camera / night vision camera.
Beautiful. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and show. Now, you did this test on this video that I'm about to show in the city. And of course, you had the aperture basically, fairly wide open, which gave it a bit of. However, when we go out to the dark sky site, we'll be able to crank that aperture down just a bit, and we'll eliminate a lot of this noise in the foreground. But what we're seeing here, and correct me if I'm wrong, is actually you're shaking the camera around, but the lights that we're seeing are actual visible stars that you're seeing taken from your place right up there in Brighton?
Yes.
Okay. So, and as you can see, we have a fairly good contrast between the dark sky background and the stars themselves. And obviously, when you see the brighter, area coming into the picture, that means you're probably getting around towards an external light source that's causing that washout effect, yes?
Right, and some of that was actually clouds. When you'd like what's coming up here now, that's clouds actually that were on the horizon. Is giving it that kind of lighter, grainier look to it. You can almost see the clouds there. And when it gets really clear and a lot darker in the video, that's when I'm pointing it directly up toward the dark sky. Most of this right here is kind of just off the horizon. I figured I'd give it the ultimate test. If it could pick up the stars with the city lights pollution, it'll pick up the stars in the dark sky real easy.
Beautiful. Okay. So yeah, absolutely. When we get out to eastern Colorado, and believe me, I've been out there, it's so dark, out in eastern Colorado that you can't even hardly see the hand in front of your face. I think that we're going to have a fantastic view of the stars. And of course, if many of you don't know what we're expecting, is we're expecting that somewhere after 45, 50,000 feet, I believe that the stars are essentially going to diminish out of our visible light spectrum. And this is one of the reasons why it was very important to me that we used a visible light camera. I didn't want to use any type of green, night vision or IR flood. Of course, an IR flood would be worthless because those little floodlights that are on the cameras only are good for, 10, 20 feet, maybe at the most. And it really wouldn't tell us much as far as looking at stars. So I was very insistent that we got a camera that would be looking at visible spectrum light, period. Because that's, NASA's telling us, and NASA also says, or NASA occasionally has footage from space where we can allegedly see the stars. I'm doubting that heavily, especially based on what I've seen from high altitude airplanes. You can see some minor lights in the sky, but nothing like what you should see, especially compared to when you're out in eastern Colorado. Now, granted, we have the advantage of being a mile high already out here, and when I'm camping up in the mountains, we're at around 10,000 plus feet, and the stars are so vivid they're almost beyond description up there. It's fabulous. So yeah, that's why we had this problem. Now, of course, one of the problems with this, as you can see, guys, is these cameras were not cheap. They're $400 a pop, and that it's an issue to some point. Now, we have got roughly, I think, about $700 in donations. Okay, and I don't know exactly what you have totaled up in equipment. I know that Chris he bought 2 of these Luna Optics cameras, and I know that you're going to be keeping one for yourself. But so rather than the $200 budget of for 2 cameras, which have been $400, we wound up spending $800 on 2. But fortunately, Chris is going to keep one of them for himself. So we kind of stayed within our budget as far as the camera. But even at $400, with all the other things that we've got, we're going to be considerably over budget. So hopefully we can, get some sort of a GoFundMe or a PayPal or something where we can kind of relieve a little bit of this budget deficit that Chris has picked up, and I will also be picking up a few $100s of it with my own money. But hopefully we can get some more people that want to contribute to it. We've already had people that have emailed us asking about it, but we don't have really any place to direct them other than PayPal. And if they don't have PayPal, then we've got to make some sort of other arrangement. So hopefully, Jaron, you can come up with something, or what do you think as far as
during the last 10 minutes? So,
did you?
yeah, there's a link there on the in the chat if you want to check it. I think it is fine. You might want to check for spelling or things like that. But it is up there. It's got a little story and it's ready to go.
Beautiful. All right. So there it is.
GoFundMe.com/Globebusters.
Yep. God, you are awesome. You just amaze me.
Yes, you are.
So yeah, everybody out there, I mean, we would definitely appreciate some help on this. One way or another, it's going to happen regardless. But if you guys can relieve a little bit of the burden off of Chris and myself, which will be making up the majority of the deficit, that would be much appreciated. And then it will also give us some very nice equipment to do some future balloon launches with hopefully other goals in mind on what we can do.
One other thing is that we did get donated a balloon that you guys are not using. Is that correct?
Yes.
That is, yeah, that's correct.
So we'll have also another balloon for the future, and hopefully, one of these cameras, and that'll make the next one obviously significantly cheaper. So, we'd all appreciate anything you can do. If you can't give monetarily, then that's understandable. If you could share our channel and our videos, that'd be awesome. But that would be cool if you guys could donate. And even if it's $1, $2, $5, that adds up.
Yeah. Now on this GoFundMe thing, what was the time limit that you set on this for the GoFundMe?
I don't think there is one.
Oh, okay. So it's just whenever, because I mean the balloon launch is obviously in 5 days, I think.
Yeah,
and,
it'll go through. I didn't even see an option for a date. I know they've kind of changed the way they do things now, but I'm pretty sure it just goes until we stop it.
Okay, good enough.
Okay.
So, Christy.
Oops.
Oh, go ahead, Kimmy.
I was going to say, I see a $600 goal on there. We have 640 right now. Do we have an idea of what the expenditures are going to be? Is that going to be about right, 1,200 or?
Well, less 400. It's going to be, I'm thinking closer to around 14, 15.
Right, that's what I thought too. One of the other ideas that I had is I know Chris wants one of the cameras, but maybe if there's somebody that's looking into cameras like this, if they do the donations or whatever, doing it, that they could actually wind up with the camera afterwards. A possibility maybe, or?
Yeah, it's a possibility.
Oh, to have somebody purchase the camera after we're done?
Yeah, and then again, I don't know if we want to do that either, because if we want to use it for future launches. But in any event, I mean, and I fully intend on kicking in a few $100s myself. So,
and plus, you can go over. I mean, it's not going to stop at 600.
Right.
You can do a GoFundMe and it can go, it could be 10,000, but you only had a $600 goal. So if you want me to change it, I can. And I know, the helium, because we just launched, earlier this week with Dwayne, and he told me that the helium tank that he bought was I want to say 340. So helium is not cheap anymore.
Yeah, wow. The last time I priced it, it was, I think a 220 cubic feet canister was 176 here.
What is the balloon size that you guys are going with?
It's the 1,200 gram, I believe.
Oh, 1,200?
Yeah.
Yeah, his was 16, so it would be less than his was.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe it's a little cheaper here in Colorado. Who knows? But we'll take it.
Okay. And Chris, did you know the weight on the cameras? We're getting asked that a few times.
The exact weight on the cameras. 2, they weigh 14 ounces.
Okay, and another question I had for you. I know that we were looking at Bethune for a launch site, and I've been running simulations on where we launched the balloon and with the winds we're expecting that day where it would land. And I know we're still about a week out, but I'm showing that the winds are going to the northeast. And if we start there, we're going to wind up in Kansas. Was there a reason that we started out so far?
Well, I done the same simulation, probably 3 weeks ago, and a couple of them ended up, one of them ended up in the middle of Buckley Airfield where it landed. And I think there was, I done that one from like Byers. I was going to try and find a closer spot to launch from so we didn't have to drive out so far. And there seemed to be a breaking point where if you were in about Byers, it ended up here in Denver when it landed. And if you went a little further out, yes, it started going northeast instead of coming back toward the mountains.
Perfect. I've done the same simulations, and where I can, and I'll send you where I do. I actually am showing that if we do, and again, this is working out, and this was the latest this morning. If we do out of around Deer Trail, I'm showing that we're going to be landing at about last chance.
Yeah, and I was going to talk about that too. I was looking at the weather, Burlington out east. It looks like Friday they're talking about 15 to 25 mile an hour winds, which would not be a good launch, or it would be even hard to land a plane in that kind of wind, let alone launching a balloon. So yeah, I started looking toward like maybe Sterling or in between Greeley and Sterling, because the winds in that area, they show going to be 5 or 10 miles an hour. Everything out east was supposed to be 15 to 25 mile an hour winds on Friday into Saturday.
Okay, we are looking at the same stuff, so that's good to know. I think we're going to have to wait for the weather to get a little bit closer in to call the place and the time. Now, I think, unless, Bob, you want to do something different, if anybody wants to join us on the launch, Bob was taking things and I can go through his email. He has got so many emails, so I'm going to ask and try to organize it from my side now that we're getting really close to it, know how much copy to bring. But if anybody wants to do the launch, if they could email me at Cami, C-A-M-I, @jeranism.com. And we'll probably on Wednesday or Thursday do a hangout and go over where we're going to meet in specifics, and again, anything that we'll need to do. But I'd appreciate anybody that wants to come, go ahead and send me an email. And people that have emailed before, we have not gotten back to you. I am sorry. We've been flying by the seat of our pants trying to get everything done this month. And I know also on the mapping project, I owe a lot of people emails. It's not because I'm not getting back, it's because I am behind. And you guys have gotten ahead of me on where I'm mapping. So this stuff is all coming, and we are working on the organization at this end.
All right, beautiful. And also the answer to the question is 400 grams or 14 ounces on that camera. And yes, Jaron.
I had a question. I remember you guys talking the first time about having the ability for people to watch it live. Is that still going, or is that no longer part of it?
Yeah, Chris?
Yes, we still got the flight computer and the radio tracker, and they'll be able to track it online.
Okay, cool.
Hopefully, I think Monday or Tuesday, I'll have Bob email me his call sign, and then I can hook all that up and try and test that either Monday or Tuesday to make sure that we've got all the kinks worked out of that. I've been just busy trying to find these cameras that were going to work for us. Now it's full on trying to get them all put together and get everything lined up. But trying to find these cameras has been quite a time consumer.
Yep. Yeah, I'll bet. That's actually kind of nifty because we're going to get kind of a clear channel frequency more or less, because the transponder frequency that Chris got is in the ham bands. And so you have to be a licensed ham radio operator to actually operate on that frequency, which of course I have my ham license. And my call sign, Chris, is very simple. It's just like my last name, except the O is a 0. So my call sign is KN0DDD. KN0DEL. KN0DEL. And we will definitely hook up this week, Chris, to make sure we've got everything, you know, together, and we'll kind of go face to face, and we'll go that way.
Okay. And Bob, I wanted to say in the chat, because we are jumping in from like previous weeks, I do have questions. Why are you doing this balloon launch? What do you want to achieve? And so maybe we want to touch base on that really quick.
Okay. Well, the reason we're doing this balloon launch, and this has actually been kind of an ongoing thing that we've been trying to do for well over a year, and Jaren finally sent the stuff, the donation money, and the original balloon to me, and we wanted to, you know, launch a balloon initially just to be able to do one, but then I was thinking, you know, so many people do balloon launches that I don't want to just be doing another balloon launch just to do a balloon launch. I really wanted to have a purpose in it, and I guess a couple months ago it hit me. It's like, hey, you know, what we can do, you know, when we were talking during one of the Globebuster shows about whether or not you can see stars once you get above a certain altitude. And of course, I came up with that idea, questioning it because of, you know, of the flights that I've taken and piloted myself, where the stars seem to diminish greatly the higher up you go. And so my idea was then, well, why don't we put that to the test? Why don't we launch a balloon at night? Why don't we point, instead of pointing the balloon at the ground or, you know, trying to pick up the sun and the moon, why don't we do this specifically so that we can see what happens to the stars, okay? And so that was the idea that we are proceeding on, and the hypothesis is that I believe that once we get a significant altitude, probably above 45 to 50,000 feet, that the stars are going to diminish greatly in the visible spectrum, which would, you know, cause a lot of questions, obviously, for the current model, because if NASA is telling us that they can see, you know, sometimes NASA astronauts will say, oh, the stars are so brilliant in space that it's like this one big white, you know, blanket. And then, of course, others say, well, it's completely black. Every balloon footage that I have ever seen launched, you know, during the day, when it does go up to the sky is black. Now, of course, the response to that would be, well, because the camera aperture is set for a bright daytime sky and it's not adjusting for when it's pointing up at the night, therefore it's going to turn black. However, some of the other footage that we've seen is still, and my own experiences flying, we don't seem to see the stars when we go up at any high altitude. So that's something that I wanted to put to the test, and that is the purpose of this test. It will be looking at the stars, and if I'm wrong, great, I'm wrong, then we know, but what we should get is a magnificent view of the stars. But if I'm right and those stars disappear, then we're going to have some really big questions for NASA. And also, it would kind of fit right into the idea of the model that I'm coming up with in the electromagnetic. And I won't go into how all that fits in, but that is the purpose of this balloon launch. So there we have it.
And then also, not only are we going to have the 2 night vision cameras on there, I went ahead and purchased just some little cheap 12 megapixel cameras. They're probably about 2 inches by 2. They're almost the size of a GoPro, but they're not fisheye lenses. I figured I would throw those on there and point those out kind of straight out, because I would like to know if we can see city lights when we get up there. If we can see city lights, that gives us a lot of questions to ask why the ISS can't fly over the dark side of the supposed globe and give us images of city lights. They keep telling us that's why they cut it off. Well, if we can use a $60 camera and pick up city lights at high altitude, then that kind of
that kind of blows up
that.
the hell, doesn't it? Yes.
Yes, it
good
sure
idea,
does.
Chris.
Yeah, great point.
Good.
I've already seen it. I just saw that there's already $30 donated. So thank you guys so much for doing that. That's awesome.
Yes, I want
awesome.
I want to thank each and everybody that has donated to this. Thank you very much.
And we want to thank you, Chris, for doing all the legwork on this and I'm really excited to do this. It's going to be a long night, obviously, as we know, because we are going to be launching this in the middle of the night, probably, 3 o'clock in the morning, Chris, you think? 2 to 3, something like that?
I was going to talk to you. I was wondering if we launched at like 11 o'clock and it takes about 2 hours for it to get to altitude, that would put us at the darkest part of the night. Plus,
okay.
Plus, it wouldn't make such a long night. If we do it at 11, by the 10:30, 11, it'll reach altitude at midnight or 1 o'clock, and then another hour for it to come down. We should be able to recover it and be done about 2:33 in the morning.
Oh, okay. Well, I see. The reason I said that is because I was thinking, and I'm naive. I realize this. And uneducated on this, but I was thinking that it would require the daylight really to retrieve the balloon. But I suppose as long as we get a GPS lock on it, even if we're having a hard time finding it in the dark, if we know the general area of it and the batteries die, then we should be okay. But what's the battery life on that transponder?
It's 5 hours.
Okay,
I believe.
And that's the other reason.
Something I saw in the chat. Can you give your PayPal email address? Some people are asking for PayPal, which I don't think GoFundMe does, but they can just send it directly to your PayPal.
Certainly, I can do that. I'll go ahead and all right. So the PayPal email address is going to be bob@denvernetwork.com. And I would appreciate it if people don't use that as a contact for me, because that is my business account. But let me put it here so everybody can see it.
But
nice
you could,
and big.
Yeah, that's fine. So you can add additional emails there. You could have put the Jeranism email on the account, I think.
That's all right. That's all right. It's not that big of a deal. I don't think it's going to be.
You already said it. Cat's out of the bag.
I said cat's out of the bag. So here it is. Here is my PayPal address. So if you go ahead and just send it to that on my PayPal and just earmark it for the balloon launch, then that will work also. And all donations would be greatly appreciated for sure. And I have no doubt that the community will come forward, and we will definitely make a record of all of our expenditures publicly available. We're not trying to dupe anybody out of anything. And of course, like I said, Chris and I both will have a rather substantial amount of money invested in this as well, because, we're certainly willing to do our part, absolutely financially, as well as handle the launch. And then, as Cami said, just email her at cami@jeranism.com, CAMI@jeranism.com, if you wish to attend. And we will definitely get back to you with all the details, where exactly we're going to be launching from. It's a good bet that it's going to be in eastern Colorado, probably a half hour to 45 minutes east of Denver. Now, whether it's to the north or the south, that will depend on the prevailing winds that are predicted. And Cami and I are going to go out and actually scout suitable launch sites tomorrow to launch from. We're going to be bringing our portable sun and I have a 5 kilowatt and a 1500 watt generator, so that we can have power if we need it to heat up hand warmers or whatever. So we'll have power available, and if we wind up launching somewhere in eastern Colorado, we may even get a blessing and a police escort. I handle all the communications for the town of Lyman, all the police. I know all the police force out there and all that, and they will have absolutely no problem with us doing anything like that. But it's just nice to know, to let them know what we're doing, and I will be, letting whatever local authority know that we're going to be doing this, so we don't get any middle of the night surprises. But yeah, I'm really excited about this. I think this is going to be great. So there you have it. So Chris, have you got a basic breakdown for our costs right now? Do you have that available?
Yeah. I could break it down fairly quickly. The radio bug and the flight computer was $450. We got the two night vision cameras, which I was going to keep one, so we'll make that 400. That's right at 950. The parachute and the train, which would be the rope and everything else, come to I think 85 for the parachute, another 15 or 20 into the rope and balloon train, as they call it. So that's right at 1,050. Then we got the cards, the flash drives for the 2 cameras, the helium, which is right around $180. So that puts us right around $1,250, $13.
Well, wait a minute. The helium itself was 180, or the 2 cards and the helium?
No, the helium itself is going to run 176 or right around 180.
Okay, so how much were the SD cards then?
The SD cards, I think they were right around $24, $25 a piece.
All right, so $50 there. All right.
Oh, and then we have another another flash drive for the flight computer. So that's another 25.
Okay.
And I just want to shout out to Nathan Oakley, thank you, and Logan Bryant, awesome. Ralph, Jackie Hilchuk, Scooter, Adam Meekin, you guys are awesome. This is incredible. Thank you, guys.
God, all of this is awesome. Beautiful.
And then we had the balloon itself, which I think was 115 or 125. I'd have to check.
All right. So 200, 650, 7, 8, 9, 10, 50, 11, 50, 12, 50, about $1,330 I'm looking at. So yeah,
I
that's.
have 1430. How did I get 100 more than you?
Oh, I don't know. I'm bad at math. I don't know. In any event, we'll break it down and itemize it for everybody. So those of you that can add better than me and Jaron can, look at it yourself.
Could be anybody for me.
All right. All right. Cool. Well, God, this is beautiful. So hopefully everybody's got that PayPal information up there. And awesome. So what else can you tell us about? Anything else you can tell us about or want to tell us about on the balloon launch, Chris?
No, I think that pretty much covers it, other than the only other thing I wanted to mention for the people that are coming, make sure that you bring some warm clothes and gloves. I work outside every day. We have a saying, you can't put it on if you don't have it. So if you bring more than what you need to keep warm, then you can always take it off. But if you don't have it, you can't put it on and stay warm.
Yep, that's true, and it does get cold in Colorado in the fall at night. So, but if you live here, I'm sure you already know that.
But there's a big difference between running to your car and getting in a warm car than standing outside for 3 or 4 hours. You got to dress a lot warmer to stay outside for 2 or 3 hours. Is what I was getting at.
Yep, absolutely.
Hey, Chris, can I ask you a couple quick questions?
Sure.
Okay, and I don't know if you'll know it or not, but do you know the ascent rate of this balloon, what it's supposed to be, the meters per second or feet per second?
Not right offhand, but I do know that we're looking about it in 108 minutes from launch to burst.
Okay, and do you know the burst altitude on this balloon or no?
It's going to be right pretty close to 100,000 feet.
Okay, so I have that in there, right? I'm just checking my numbers because I'm also doing the calculations here on where it's going to go and land. So wonderful. While you're there, thank you. I've filled it in on my chart. All right.
And we're looking at about 39 minutes, I believe, 39 minutes to 45 minutes from burst to when it actually lands.
Okay, beautiful.
Oh, there is one other thing. We wanted to do this legally, and by the FAA rule, and I ordered this, we have to put a navigational light on it that flashes 40 to 100 beats per minute, and it has to be visible for 5 nautical miles.
Okay, question on that. Have we tested that with the cameras and see how it impacts it?
No, it won't be until Tuesday. So
Okay.
I'm going to do that too, which will help us in recovering it because we should be able to see that light from way off.
Oh yeah, that will be helpful, won't it? Because I was wondering how the hell we were going to see it at night. So, but as long as we have the GPS coordinates to go to, then we'll be right in the ballpark. But a big flashing light would really be helpful. Jaron, when Dwayne did his launch, did he have when he did the sunrise launch? Was he required, or did he use a strobe light at all?
Yeah, he had 2 on there. One about the same place as the payload, and one about 15 feet higher, closer to the balloon tip or the balloon neck. And he just had those little, those clip-on red flashing. I think they're for bikes. They look like they're $5. It's just a clip-on, like a clamp-on red flashing strobe light.
Oh, okay. All right, and then this is his footage right here, right? The high altitude balloon 4, but this does not include the cameras that were pointing straight up, right?
Correct. He's still loading that, which was kind of the one that we wanted to see, was the cameras pointed up to look at the balloon. I'm sorry, to look at the moon. And this one here we launched probably a little bit early. Obviously, we didn't have the camera that you guys are going to be using. This was just a regular GoPro Hero. That obviously it got some pictures of the stars, but they were, not easy to see. And then we get a good sunrise again, but yeah, the first half of the video is pretty dark. So it would be nice to see what happens when we have, and this was also pretty close to the full moon, and you guys will be close to the new moon, so the sky should be nice and black for us.
Yep. Yeah, that's definitely the whole idea. We want it as dark as possible. So yes, that and that's the thing, because I looked at this, and we're going to actually see this here in a second when he fades it out.
There's me, Missa.
That's what I thought. There you are. And yeah, you can see the city lights really well, of course. And up she goes. Was it cloudy? It kind of looks like it's cloudy, but it's hard to tell.
No, that's the fire, the smoke.
Oh, are you serious?
Oh my.
That's horrible.
We still haven't, well, I can't say that. Last night I saw stars for the first time in over 2 months. So, because I was thinking there's no chance that they're going to have this air show because of it. But, we popped outside, and sure enough, it's right in time.
Huh. It's amazing. So yeah, but we're not really seeing much of anything in lights. Let's kick forward here quite a bit. We can see the ground.
Yeah,
of course.
You can see that pretty well. We were trying to get a good view of the sunrise. Probably would have been better if we would have launched maybe 45 minutes later, just so we could have gotten up right as we saw the sun. We kind of got up too early. And then the other thing that would have been really cool about this is to have had the data from the computer that worked for Dwayne every time until this time. And I could tell something was up because when you're watching the thing come down, there's certainly something interesting that happens. I don't know if you've ever heard Dwayne's footage, but he has that flight computer that makes that beep sound. Beep, 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 as the thing's going up. Well, at a certain place, you can't hear it anymore. Once you're up about, my guess would be 75,000 feet or so, there's no more sound. And with this one, when it when it got up to about, my guess would be halfway up, 50,000 feet or so, you can hear the beeping going out, but you can tell it's one of those sounds like your smoke alarm in your house is going dead. It's like a chirp, but it's kind of like, it's kind of going out. And
it's
then
funny you mentioned that.
And then usually you can hear that when it's coming down, as it starts coming down, you can hear that noise pick up again. But this time the noise is gone. There's no noise as it's coming down. And he got the flight computer out, and there was no data on the card. So we're not able to know the height this went or the temperature, all the things that he was able to have easily on his last launches. This one didn't have, so kind of upsetting on some of that stuff. Just would have been nice to know how high we are. But there you go. You see, that was Sirius that just went by there. And I'm not 100% positive on that, but I think I looked at the planetarium software and was checking the location of that, and it looks like it must be Sirius. And then if you look right next to the sun rising, to the right of it is, I believe, Mercury. You can see it towards the beginning of the sunrise, and then it kind of goes out, and you can see the moon towards the latter end. But again, there's still one more camera view that he's uploading, and that one, the camera didn't go out any early, so it's the whole tape.
Beautiful. Okay. Yeah, I said it was funny that you mentioned the fire alarm chirping, because I woke up at 4 o'clock this morning to, guess what? Chirp, chirp. Drove me crazy, but and so I went back to sleep, but this morning I had to replace the battery. But it's just bizarre that you said that, because those things only go out once every 3 or 4 years, and it's just weird. Anyway.
Yeah. Now with this one, I mean, I think there's a lot of good footage here, because when you're watching the sunrise, it certainly is interesting that it doesn't take place like a Terminator line like you would think. It almost encompasses the dome, for lack of a better word, but it kind of, just if you watch the sunrise, there's a lot of interesting stuff here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll just leave it playing while we're talking about some stuff. So, all right. Well, beautiful then. So we are pretty much on our way. You've got the strobe light coming in Tuesday, and we should have everything good to go. And like I said, everybody, if you're just joining us now and you want to attend the balloon launch and lend a hand, would be much appreciated. If not, if you just want to watch, that's great too. Send Cami an email, Cami, C-A-M-I, @jeranism.com. And we'll definitely make sure that you get a notification with exactly where we're going to be. And we'll just kind of make a party out of it. I think it'll be a lot of fun. How many people were at your launch, Jaron?
It was just myself and Missa and Dwayne and his son.
Oh, wow. Okay. Just a little group. That's cool. Very nice. So
if somebody's rich and wants to buy me a plane ticket to show up and meet Bob for the first time ever, hey, I'm sure I could work out a flight.
Yeah, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, that would be awesome. But, Cami and I are looking at possible trips out to, stay at some place out near you. And we were thinking about doing that maybe within the next month or two, something like that.
Yeah,
so we're
awesome.
kind of mulling that over.
Good, because I've been wanting to do something now that the fire's almost, I think it's like 85% contained. And I've been wanting to do something with the people local anyway, just something for Bay Area people, and maybe have everybody go to the beach or something. So it'd be awesome to have you guys there as well and do some testing. And we've got the 2 portable suns, and you guys could bring the laser, and we could shine it at the ISS and have it crash, and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So yeah, that's cool. Well, we'll see how everything works out, and like I say, hopefully I'll get that fire contained, and yeah, and we'll go from there. So, all right. So I guess let's move on to a couple other things then. I kind of wanted to say that we've had several episodes now of season 2, and we're probably at some point getting there too. We're probably going to need to wrap up season 2, and I think we'll probably do that after the balloon launch. And then I plan on taking a few weeks off at least. And then Cami and I were talking about what we could do for season 3 when we come back, and I kind of wanted to run this by you. And Jaron has not heard a word of this, guy, so you're going to hear it as I'm saying it. But
just me getting fired.
Yeah, you're fired. We're done with you. But what I was thinking is it would be neat if we could kind of organize sort of a research group. Because one of the things that I notice is that, Flat Earth is, we've got a lot of great researchers, and everybody's kind of doing their own thing, and there's a lot of repetition, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's kind of like directionless at this point. And I was thinking that what we really need is something like what Nassim Haramein does with the Resonance Project. Is basically he has a bunch of researchers, and they're all collaborating and contributing on specific projects. And I thought that would be really neat, to be able to do that with the Flat Earth community. And I wouldn't mind, at least initially, kind of assuming the role of like director of that, where we basically come up with some specific things that we want to achieve, either by tests or specific research on putting together projects. And so I think it'd be awesome if we could kind of coordinate the efforts of all the good flat Earth researchers out there, and maybe really get this accelerated. And I'm not exactly positive how to go about that yet, but it's something that Cammie and I were going to mull over, kind of during the break, and then maybe organize. So what would you guys think about something like that?
Yeah, I think it's great. I get so much data in emails and in my research. It's just everybody's got their thing that they're strong at or what they enjoy, and I've always thought that if we had a place to kind of drop all that stuff to where it becomes like a repository for people who are interested in just researching. Maybe somebody's got extra time one day, but they don't know what to research or where to start. But if we had a place where they could just go and look at either there'll be links or documents or, some different type of place where, like a knowledge base or something, to where everyone can just go. And maybe for people that also don't have time to investigate or don't have time to do the research, but they do a little bit and they find something they think could be big, but they just don't have the time to dig through it, that they can go and drop it. And so it just kind of becomes like a big pot of links and things like that. And then, you could post things that you either research directions that, or something that you're looking for. And this way it kind of just becomes a little community of researchers, to where, we are helping each other out, or somebody could put next to a link, hey, I'm working on this, and it would really help expedite, I think, a lot of what we're looking for.
Absolutely. And then, of course, anybody that is working on these projects, not only if they make a video or whatever data they collect and collaborate, absolutely, you would be welcome on the show to present the data, and just basically turn it into more of a research community. Because honestly, I try to keep Globebusters, along the lines of being technical. From time to time, we do touch on community happenings, and that's something ultimately that I want to eliminate completely, because that just turns into a can of worms, and it's just not a good thing, I think, to talk about the community. It's very counterproductive, and I want to completely get away from that, and that would be one of the tenets of the Globebusters research group, if you will, or whatever we wind up calling it, would be, let's just keep it professional, let's keep it to business, let's keep it to what we're trying to achieve here, and that's prove the flat Earth model, disprove the globe model, and keep it as technical as we can, and keep as much empirical evidence out there as we can, and simply go forward that way. And put a little bit more direction to this. And like I said, we've got some fabulous researchers out there. I've highlighted many of them. Ephesians is fantastic. Rendra AZ. There's just so many of you out there. It's hard. And I just discovered a few more just this week who I think these people are out there doing fabulous research. And people just keep coming into this all the time, more and more and more. And so we need to utilize this talent. And take these people who are so very talented, that have maybe 50 to 100 subs, get them the exposure, get their abilities, and use their abilities for the good of the overall community. And so that's something that Cammie and I are going to mull over on exactly how to do that. I have no idea on how to be a quote-unquote director of research, and I'm certainly not even saying that I'm the best qualified, but I'm the only one right now that's even willing to assume that. But if somebody that's really good at organizational skills wants to step into that, and you are really good at that, then I certainly have no attachment to that title or that job, to be honest with you. But I just want to get it rolling and get it started, and just have a very professional group of flat earther researchers moving this whole paradigm forward. So that's something that we will definitely be coming back with as a plan for that when we return with season 3. And let's see. And any other thing else that you guys can think of too. I always want to try and make Globebusters better than what we have now. And I like what we have now, but there's always room for improvement. And I want to keep it fresh. I don't want it to be the same thing over and over and over every week. And I know that's very difficult to do, believe me, because every week you can ask Cami, I'm scrambling around, geez, what am I going to cover this week that is not a redundancy of everything else that everybody else has done, at least to some degree. And it's hard to do. So I think the more heads we have coming together on this, the better. Because it's really a difficult thing to do all by yourself. So that'll be something that we proceed forward with. So other than that, we'll kind of leave that behind. And then did you have some things that you wanted to talk about, Jaron, at all? Before I kind of go over some of these other things that I wanted to highlight?
Yeah, just what you talked about, that I have spent the whole week looking in at a lot of George Ellis's work, and really got a better understanding of exactly where science went wrong, exactly where physics went wrong, and the problems with infinity. And I feel like I made the mistake a couple times of saying that I thought that the Earth could be it a dome or be it an infinite plane, and I now don't like that I ever used that word infinite, because it doesn't exist in reality. There is no such thing as infinity, because it can never be reached. And so, Antonio and I did a funny little play with Brian Cox, and one of the things we were pointing out is the fact that Brian Cox believes in the infinite monkey theory, or the infinite whatever theory. And the reason that he says we exist is because we have to exist, because it's inevitable that in a universe of infinities that there would be a universe like this with the physics of this universe. And since it's inevitable that everything, single thing possible would happen, well, I mean, that just should break down, and you should realize right away that it's a complete and total joke, that you can't have an infinity of anything, that it's completely nonsense. And you can have very high numbers. You can, have mathematics to where you've got billions and billions and billions, but you can't have infinity, because it can never be reached. And that's what's needed for a lot of their model. They need infinity for the stretches of space, and they need infinity is a mathematical term that really isn't even needed in math. And it wasn't until they got rid of infinity that they were able to go to higher math, such as calculus and things like that. And so it's just something that I think people need to think about, that the idea of anything infinite probably shouldn't be talked about if we're talking about provable, testable, repeatable. There is nothing infinite. Even if you were to say, well, Jaron, there's an infinite number of thoughts that humans could have, and that it's just not true. You can do the equations on it, that you would be able to figure out how many thoughts each person would be able to have if they had one every second for the entire 100 years of their life, and multiply that out. No matter what you do, you're never going to come out to infinity. You're going to have a number. And the problem is that we've allowed them to bring in the word infinite, and that creates quite a bit of a problem. So the other thing I was looking at this week was some interesting tests with DNA and some other things that I think tie into all this. And you want me to talk about that right now, or you want to do your
Sure. Go right ahead.
So, I mean, we know that knowledge is power, right? I mean, that's pretty clear in the world, and that the lack of knowledge is a lack of power. And that's how I think that we've been trapped where we are, is because we've got people who have the truth, or have the knowledge, that hold it over us by sending us to school and teaching us things that aren't necessarily empowering us to get very far in life. And one of those things that I found this week was, the fact that they say our genes make up who we are. And if you think that, well, then you're going to have problems, because you're going to think, well, my dad had heart surgery, my dad had heart problems, my mom had diabetes. And what you're doing is you're creating your own reality. And we talk about that, and people talk about the book The Secret, and the power of attraction. And I don't think it's described quite right. But one thing that is interesting is, if you look into genes and what they do in the cells that make up your body, I saw some interesting testing, some interesting experiments this week. One of them was that they put these a gene or a cell in each of these test tubes, and then they introduced something like either a detriment or something that's either promotes the growth of the cell. But when they introduced the same thing in all 5 test tubes, the results were always the same. Well, right away what that should do, what people should realize, is it completely does away with the idea of evolution through natural selection or through random changes. What basically it means is that your cells react. If it's a benefit to the cell, well, then the cell will grow. And if it's a detriment to the cell, then the cell puts up a defense mechanism and tries to block that or get away from it. And it's not random. So it's not something that basically our cells change based on our environment. So that totally is different than what evolution says, which is your changes are random by random selection. And it's simply, we should know that that isn't true. So it tells you that if you look at these tests and these different kind of tests, what they also did was they put on a petri dish these same kind of little cells. They put one in each petri dish, and they put nutritional things in one, and they put toxins in the other. And when you put the nutritional things in the petri dish, the cell moves towards the nutrition. It tries to grow. It tries to eat that. And the other one, when you put in something that's not nutrition, something that's toxic, the cell actually tries to get away. It knows to move away from the toxin. And so really what you have there, and what we're noticing with our rice experiment here at home, is that truly we can create the kind of life that we want. And the way that works is everything in the news is negative, right? We know that. And all you hear is this doom and gloom and these scare tactics, and we hear fear porn. And what happens is you have to look at your body like a camera. And if anything that you sense with your body, be it through touch, smell, hearing, whatever, that your body takes an image of what it assumes it's seeing, and then it passes it through a filter, and that filter is your surroundings. But the crazy thing about our surroundings is it's based on our beliefs. And if our beliefs are wrong, then we are essentially changing our cells, because your cells will react to whatever is around them. And that's something that's been proven, that if you're in a bad spot, just like we know that secondhand smoke kills, things like that, that if you're putting yourself in those situations and you're in that situation and you're thinking about it and you're thinking, oh man, I'm going to have heart problems, or oh man, I have a thyroid problem. When you think things like that, that you're kind of telling your body that's how to, or how to react to your environment. And it's the same thing with the globe, the globe Earth versus the flat Earth, is that I think that they purposely teach us an incorrect view of the world, so that when we hear things like chemtrails and things like that, if you're constantly worried about what's in the sky, and a lot of people have said, well, they're not chem spraying because nobody's dying. If somebody was, well, I think our bodies are absolutely incredible, beyond the most incredible thing that you can imagine. Our bodies, the way that cells know where to exist, the way that the cell in your leg knows to be in your leg and the one in your arm knows to be in your arm, it obviously is an incredible apparatus, and it can fight off anything. But the problem is that if you constantly worry about things, well, then your cells basically react in that way. So think of it this way. If you were to look at 2 different cells in your body, they do, or just look at one cell, your cells can do one of 2 things. They can grow, they can try and grow, they can go for growth, or they can protect themselves. And that's the 2 things that your cells do. It's one or the other. But when you are stressed out, when you have issues, when you feel like you're being chem sprayed, when you feel like you're getting sick, when you're stressed at school, I don't know if you guys remember, like the last week of school during finals, everybody would get sick. And it's because you're stressed out. And when you're stressed, you're telling your cells to protect themselves. And that's what they do. It's like fight or flight. They put up their defense mechanism. And what that does is it stops growth. And the longer that you're stressed, the longer that you're all wound up, the longer that you're angry, the more your cells stay in that position. They stay in that protect mechanism. Well, when they do that for so long, they die. And that's what happens to our cells, is that if they don't grow, they die. And so I think that a lot of people, should really look at the way that they think about themselves, think about their environment, and the one thing that can promote growth the most is love. It is it's the catalyst that must have created this universe. I've always felt that there's a creator, but really this week it hit me that it should be a no-brainer in every possible way that this is a creation. Even if you just look at science and them saying there's laws of physics, well, who makes laws? I mean, you can't have random universes popping into existence through big bangs that are governed by laws. And whether the planets are really spherical bodies, whether they are just lights, whatever it is, we've got a sun and a moon that keep time for us more perfectly than any clock humans can devise. And those were put into motion by a thought far beyond what we can even imagine. So there is no question that there's a creator. And what science did is they took the idea of like the Big Bang and they put that there because what it does is it really eliminates the possibility of God, because every item that we know of, that we sense, has to be explainable through certain laws, right?
Yes.
Let me think of what I'm trying to say. So think of like, so it has to be either noticeable, or we have to be able to test it, or we have to be able to see it. It could be even invisible to us, like the non-visible spectrum, those kind of things. But we have to have some way of detecting it or feeling its presence. But when you put a Big Bang and you say the Big Bang created time and space, well, you've kind of put a hindrance on there being a creator. And that's why they go to that model, and that's why they won't get off of it, because it allows them to operate in a world where God doesn't need to exist. But when you really think about it, it's, there had to be something that created it, right? I mean, wouldn't you agree, Bob?
Yeah, absolutely. And going back on some of that, let me kind of touch that. You're talking about something, and I know we're going to catch flack for this, but I don't care, because people will say, well, this is just metaphysical bullshit. And, I'm sorry, but that's not true. This is not metaphysical bullshit. This is demonstrable, absolute fact. What Jaron is talking about how cells will propagate towards nutrition rather than poison, and this all goes back to resonance. When you are on a resonant vibration, it's kind of like people. When you get a bad quote-unquote vibration from somebody, that you have no idea how literal that actually is, because again, it's all about vibration and resonance. And when you are attracted to somebody, or you are finding yourselves in agreement or in good feelings, you are typically resonant with them, or along the same thought lines or the same action lines. And of course, this applies both for good ideas and bad ideas, good thoughts and bad thoughts. Just like, I've talked before about when I'm in a crappy mood and I go out and I'm just in a bad mood, I will notice that other drivers around me will seem to act that way. And then I've talked about, my friend Chuck, that was convinced that everybody cuts him off. And in fact, it was because he was putting that out to the universe. These things are absolutely fact. And what you were saying about, The Secret, and I definitely had my time with The Secret, and The Secret is all about the law of attraction. And, what Jerry and Esther Hicks were basically saying in that is that the way that you manifest things into your life is to first of all get a vision of them, that how you want it to be, and then think about them in a very positive light. In other words, match your vibration, your outlook, to what it is that you want to achieve, good or bad. And of course, obviously, like I said, it works just as strong for the quote-unquote dark side as it does for positive things. Right. If you are focused on dark things, bad things, absolutely it is going to happen to you. If you are focused on good things and you have a good outlook on life, this karmic energy is going to come back to you. And again, I don't care if people are saying this is New Age bullshit. I strongly disagree, because once you truly experience this stuff and understand it for yourself, you realize that this mystical woo-woo stuff called karma is 100% real. Why? Because it is an electric and vibrational universe, and likes attract like. It's not a matter of opposites attract. That only happens in stark polarities and in electrical and magnetic circuits. But as far as vibrational and organic substances, it's more the rule that likes attract, and in personalities, likes attract. You're not attracted to somebody that's so completely opposite from you that you can't even stand to talk to them. It doesn't work that way. You go along with somebody that's commensurate with your beliefs and your general outlook on life and your general attitude towards other people. So again, that's exactly right.
And if people think that it's rah-rah metaphysical or some sort of New Age BS, then in my opinion, you just haven't done the research on it. Because if you do look into it and look at what tests are showing, and you can look at Rupert Sheldrake, you can look at a lot of people that have done testing on this stuff. No, you're not going to find it in mainstream science, because it goes against everything that mainstream science is about. And the reason that it all actually does work, and versus what people say it doesn't work, if you go the route of The Secret and you think that you can sit on the couch and you can envision yourself making a lot of money in your business, and you can picture that, and you can just sit there and watch TV all day and think that the money's going to come, that's not how it works. That's not what anybody's saying. You have to actually put forth the effort. You actually have to plant the seeds, if you will. The universe doesn't know what to give you, but if you, by setting yourself up for success, and you actually work hard at whatever you're doing, and you envision that happening, your whole entire makeup is changed. And that's what I'm seeing with these cells and the way that they react, is that your cells act based on your surroundings. So when people say, oh, well, this person got cancer because the cancer gene was activated. Well, genes don't activate like that. That's not how they work. But they do change based on your environment. So if there's something around you that has changed, or something that you're doing differently, or there's a negative feeling around you, it's possible that you are having your cell pick up that disease, or and in whatever way it is. And so any way that we can protect ourselves from that, and it doesn't mean to be fearful. And that's what I think they teach us, because when you're fearful, like I said, they've done these tests, and your cells will put themselves into a defense mechanism. And that's why they've screwed everything up, because our bodies are meant to be incredible antitoxins. They're supposed to create an immune system. That's what your cells do. And they do an excellent job at it until you change your environment, or change your perception of your environment. So by them saying all these things are going wrong in the world, and them saying that there's these race wars, and it makes you watch these tapes of black men getting shot by white cops, and you either take the side of the cop or you take the side of the black guy, whatever you're doing is you're creating a environment that isn't necessarily real. But your cells don't know that. Your cells are in between your environment and yourself, and in between there's that filter of your beliefs. And that's what's scary, because we were taught of our beliefs from the time we were born. And it isn't hard to get rid of your beliefs once you accept the fact that you've probably been lied to about a lot of things. And when you rework the way you think about your environment, and you think in a positive light, and you treat other people with respect and love, and you're happy, that your cells will respond, because then what they do is they grow. And as cells grow, they build up an immune system to toxins, and they become stronger, and they can fight off more diseases, and you can age better, and everything that goes with being positive. And like I said, please do the Reich experiment that we've done. Take the time to do that. I know Dwayne was saying he's going to do it by planting 3 seeds, like 3 plants, and treat them the same way: the neutral, the hate, and the love. And when you do that and you see the results for yourself, it becomes an absolute no-brainer. It makes no sense. Your brain cannot wrap it around that that we've got 3 jars in our kitchen right now, and yeah, we don't have any mold on any of them, but clearly the love rice looks edible, and clearly the hate rice looks like a soup. And what is the other explanation for that? They're in the same location in the kitchen. They're on the counter. Just so happens one of them gets love from Miss and I every day. The other one gets yelled at and cussed at. So obviously what we're doing there is because of our emotions towards that rice, it is causing the rice to react in a different way. It could be, just imagine that being a person. So the rice is made up of the same thing. It's got cells, it's got particles that are putting up a defense mechanism because we're yelling at it. And that is causing it to become like a soupy mess, which next will be mold, because its cells are in a protect mode. They're all in this scared mode. They're not growing. Whereas the other rice, the love rice, is able to put up, it's able to grow. Its cells are getting stronger. It's being able to fight against time and not grow mold, to not go soupy. And so, I mean, once you've seen that for yourself, it should change the way that you live your life and change the way that you treat others. And if everybody did that, ultimately that would be the answer for the world being, a better place. And, I'll just bring this up just because it's something I've been looking into, and we're not saying it's true. I know nothing about whether it's true or not, but a lot of people have heard about reincarnation and have thought about it before. But one thing that I thought was interesting, and this was somebody who called in on Raw the other night and just mentioned this, and it's really been stuck in my mind lately, is they said, what if we're all reincarnated and we're reincarnated here on Earth? What a big difference that would make in the fact that we all think, and Christians think, and good people think, well, I live a good life. I'm doing fine by myself. Yeah, my government's bombing Syria, and yeah, all these things are happening, but I'm going to go to heaven because I'm doing the right things. I believe in Jesus Christ. And so they feel that way. But what if that's the trap in the fact that we are all reincarnated right here? So by you doing that, you're allowing the world to become a worse place because you're taking care of yourself. You're fine. You're going to be fine when you go to heaven, but you don't know that you're just going to be born again when you die, but you're going to be born right back here on Earth with no idea where you're coming back, which means you could come back in Syria, which means you could come back in Afghanistan as a child there. And maybe that's the whole point of what Jesus was saying, which the kingdom of God is here, is at hand. This is it. This is our chance. But we should be making the world a better place. We should be leaving it better than when we got here, so that if we do come back, because this is the way I look at it, if you did change your mindset, and again, I understand how many Christians are out there, and I love Christians. I'm not trying to trash them or anything, but I'm just saying that if you changed your mindset from, I'm doing this because I want to get to heaven, and so as long as I follow these rules of God and I love Jesus, that I'm going to heaven. What would be the difference of just changing your outlook to keep that, but add to it, but I'm also going to do things throughout my life that make it a better place? Because in doing that, then you're covered on both ends, to where if you do come back with some sort of reincarnation, well, the world hopefully you're coming into is a good place to live. And if you don't, because you face God and you get to go to hell or heaven, well, we're a good person, so you're going to go to heaven anyway. So that's why I think it was probably a better way to teach people to look at things. And that's where I get real weary about these scriptures and get real weary about religions, is because it certainly seems like they're teaching a certain methodology for a reason. And I've said that before, and as much as Bob and I both agree on the secrets that are in the Bible, the truth that's in the Bible, I also think that we need to have the ability to realize that some of it has been changed, some of it has been altered, mistranslated. And if that does happen, well, then there's probably some parts of it that we should, not look at in the same light. If it says that we should stone homosexuals, it's probably a good idea to let God take care of the judging of people, and we take care of loving people. And it doesn't mean that you need to, if you go out on your patio and 2 guys are making out on your porch, tell them, excuse me, can you get off my porch? I don't want that over here. That's fine. That's fine. But at the same time, hating people for no reason who you've never met, or standing on the corner of, the Westboro Baptist Church with signs that say God hates fags. That's not how you make the world a better place. You have never been in a homosexual's body or mind, and neither have I. So I can't say oh, they're absolutely born that way, or no, that's a decision they absolutely made. I can't say that, but what I can say is that I'm going to love them just like I love everybody else. They're here on earth like we are. We're all in the same predicament. It's not easy to live. It's not easy to make money to support yourself. It's not easy to go through relationships and have family problems and everything that we all have to deal with. So we should have each other's backs. And I feel like there's so much hate and vitriol throughout the entire world. And I just think that we can change that. And a lot of what I'm learning and a lot of what tests we're doing and a lot of what we're looking into is really showing me that, the way I've been living is not the correct way. That I think that we have the power to do so much. And that's the goal of the elite. That's the reason that all this media has been taken over, because they realize that whatever people think, whatever you perceive to be your environment, is what will affect your body and the way that you grow and the way that you wither away and die. And so I think that the best way we can combat that is to change our outlook on everything. And, as far as this election coming up, I'm so happy I'm not voting again. And I've never voted. And the reason that I'm happy for that is because if you voted for George Bush, you voted for him to be your representative. You picked him, and he went and probably had something to do with dropping the buildings of 9/11. He probably had everything to do with creating a war in Iraq and killing thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of innocent people. You elected that man to be your representative. And as such, you might be on the hook for the things that person did. And so for me, I'm happy that I'm not voting, because I do not think I need to be governed. I don't need a representative to bomb another country for me. That country has never come over here and tried to do anything to me. No country has ever tried to attack me. Therefore, I don't need an elected official to bomb on my behalf. And I just think that people need to look at the way we do things and really alter their perception of their environment and change the way that, just because somebody tells you have to vote and that you have to go to the polls and you have to pick one of these two people, you don't need to pick the worst of two evils. You don't. And if you honestly want Trump, then that's fine. You can go vote for him. But again, then you are saying that you're not capable of your own government, that you're not capable of taking care of yourself, that you need protection, you need welfare, you need unemployment, all these things that the government will provide for you, but at a cost. And that cost is that they are going to be your representatives, and what they tell you to do, you have to do. You've gave up. You've said, I'm not capable of creating my own laws. I'm not capable of taking care of myself. I don't know how to run a society. I don't know how to be nice to people without laws telling me to be nice to people. And I just think that that's silly. The book that God wrote, in my opinion, is on everybody's heart. You know what's right. You know what's wrong. It's not something that was taught to you by the Bible, despite what some Christians will say, that we wouldn't know morality, we wouldn't know truth if it wasn't for the Bible. I think that that's nonsense. I think that you would know that lying is wrong. You would know punching somebody in the face is worse than giving them a bouquet of flowers. Those things are written in your heart. And so you should feel comfortable in that knowledge and realize that if the Creator was going to write you a book, he'd put it inside you. It wouldn't be on paper.
We are the Creator's book. And I don't remember where I saw this, but I really liked the idea of it. And, they were talking about, that men wrote the Bible, but there is one book that is unequivocally written by God, and that is us. And he kind of made the analogy of, we have, our right side and our left side and our coverings, and it's separated by our spine in the back, just like a book. And literally, the human being is the book that God wrote. And there can be no dispute about that, right? So I totally agree with you, Jaron. And I think that, people need to make a paradigm shift, really, to exactly what you're talking about, and realize that we are all part of the human race. We're all brothers and sisters, and it's just really a good thing to, and some people call this woo-woo, everybody be friends stuff. But you know what? I'd rather woo-woo be everybody be friends and love everybody than proceed on with the hatred and division and war and everything else like that. So, yeah. And as far as voting, I have to really like what Brap Allgood said. He said, "I'm going to just simply write in no confidence."
Yeah, exactly.
I agree with that totally. Because I mean, God, look at the idiots that we have running for president. I mean, these two people have got to be the most hated individuals probably on the face of the earth. The lowest pieces of crap that there are. And this is our choice for president. It's like, oh my God, you know. What has humanity come to? We've got to change the paradigm, and that's what all of the truth-seeking community is trying to do. So, yeah,
Totally.
it's the way it should be. Absolutely. So, anyway, if it's okay with you, Darren, we're kind of getting short on time, and I wanted to have Cammie talk a little bit about one of the questions that we get a lot from people, and we spent a good amount of time talking about it this week. About what exactly are meteors, and if that's okay with you, we want to kind of move on to that. And by the way, speaking of love, look at this. Look at this. Oh wow, $990 of a $600 goal. Talk about love in the community. We are funded. Way.
And this isn't in PayPal, Bob. This is just on this page. I've been telling people to send to your PayPal.
Yeah,
Wow.
I just got $20 on my PayPal. So now we're at over $1,000, just like that. God, thank you so much, everybody. Wow. And whoever Anonymous is, you are a rock star. Somebody anonymously donated $500 in one shot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. It's like unbelievable.
Yeah, you guys rock. So we are funded. Wow. I love it. So this is going to be awesome. I'm speechless. I don't know what to say. Thank you so much, everybody. So, all right. Well, Cammie, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what we think meteors are. So why don't you go ahead and go with that?
Okay, before I go with that, I just wanted to, because I have them up here, I just wanted to say a few things while I'm on here to people in the community, and thanks on how amazing they are. People that we're hoping in the group, and maybe these are groups that already exist, you know, somewhat, that again, when we're talking about getting together, but like everybody working on the same things right now. Jason Clark, thank you. He posted this in Quest for Flat Out Truth, and this came up on my phone while I was researching this particular pitch. Oh, you're not
hang on. Why don't you share your screen?
Okay, hold on. I'm sorry, people. I thought I was. How do I do that?
Hang on. Let me hook her up, guys. Hang on just a second. First, let me. She's a newbie. She's kind of a rookie, but that's okay. Present to everyone. All right. So you're presenting. Let me run over here.
Okay. Do I move this one over? Or?
Yeah. Let's just do this. So we will go screen share.
He's setting me up, everyone.
Share.
Yay.
And now.
No.
Should be presenting. Oops, sorry. Just a second.
And it looks like it's up.
Yep.
Okay, and so this is just to show everybody's like working on the same page, and these ideas are like throughout the entire community, and again, it's just getting us all there. Jason Clark, I noticed this popped up on my Facebook while I had this particular screen up. We're all working on the same things. I think it's amazing. Can't wait to, again, figure out organization and actually work with so many, you know, more of the people in the community. So I wanted to say thank you on that. Jason Stiles is in the audience, I think, right now. His book, you guys touched on it a little bit, or did you, Bob, on Jason Stiles?
No, we didn't yet, but Patricia did a reading from it yesterday, which was awesome. Jason Stiles is Persian scribe.
Right, and Patricia, oops, that's not it. Patricia did a reading on, again, the book on her show, and it somehow switched over. And I am a newbie at this. I am so nervous, Bob. On the what are meteors? We're getting lots of questions, everybody, coming into the thing saying that meteors cannot work on the electromagnetic, or what are they, or how are they happening? And it is something that when we're looking at the model that we're putting together right now, the map and the model, what we are trying to do is we're trying to build a unified model of the heavens and earth and everything in there, and make everything work with practical and classical sciences as opposed to any theoretical. And the amazing thing is so far it seems to be working. If you take the complications and the fake magic out of it and just apply real classical things that you can test on, we're coming up with real possible answers and plausible answers for a lot of things. And so when we're asked what are meteors and how do they work, oops, Bob's coming and helping me. I don't have it running. Okay, so it can be running in the back. Oh, I have a lot of different.
So don't go to the chat. Just go ahead and talk about
Okay. Sorry, people. And that threw me off a little bit. Okay, and so oops. Bob, that threw me. I'm sorry.
How about I start it out then a little bit,
Please
and then
do.
you can kind of add to this.
Please do. That
All
would
right.
help me, because I had these all open and we just got all confused. So go ahead.
All right. So basically, what we're talking about this week is, how what exactly are meteors? And Cami was explaining to me that, meteorites are definitely something that do come down out of the sky. They are composited of like certain metals, crystal materials, and stuff like that. And so, I'm wondering, where exactly is this material coming from? Okay, and what we kind of were thinking is that if the sun and the moon are, assuming either the sun or the moon, and I think maybe the moon more likely than the sun, are actual physical objects up in the sky, they are being held up there by something that you may be familiar of, called quantum locking. Okay, and quantum locking basically just allows certain parts of the magnetic field to penetrate a diamagnetic type of surface and hold it in a position up in space. And it can, as we've all seen the little thing going around in a circle on some videos where the guy dips the saucer into liquid nitrogen, and of course then it floats on the magnetic rails going around and around in circles. So that would be a good example of quantum trapping. So what we were thinking then is that there is likely other material that's up there that's both crystalline and metal. And I was asking, well, how exactly would it get up there, especially if it was crystal? How do crystals actually grow? How do they form? And I think we can probably take it from there. Cami, you want to talk about that? How the crystals are actually forming and getting up there?
Okay, I think I can do that. If you go back to what you were even talking with on how your crystal structures, am I on? Your crystal structures, you'll notice that the same thing that you were doing with atoms and with your balls, and the same things are happening, you're right, with everything, with rocks. Crystals and rocks grow. They're growing all of the time. It's not, and again, I have the wrong set of tabs open right now for this, but this is nothing new. It's things are, again, an easy way to, I have my wrong set of tabs up. It's so funny. They are growing, constantly growing, all of the time, everywhere, in the way that you were explaining. And so there'd be no reason to believe that they could not be growing up as they are down here. If you have a quantum locking field and you have gases and you have moisture and you have liquids, they could have very easily formed up there. Let's see if I can get to my other, here's a better set of tabs. Okay. And when they talk about rocks and things on how long they take to form, you'll see how long does it take a fossil to form. Fossils are often said to take millions of years to form. But what they're finding out is some of the fossils are only a few years old. Fossils can take days to form and weeks to form. Oops.
In other words, okay, so fossils, what mainstream science tells us is that fossils are taking millions of years to form. But what we know for a fact that in laboratories, they're able to fossilize things quite rapidly. In fact, there are several examples, just around old plain Earth. They have actual fences that are, were made out of wood and barbed wire, and the wood will actually fossilize due to conditions of extreme moisture and then high heat and other variables that may be coming into place. And that actually will cause things to fossilize rapidly. So basically, in the upper atmosphere, there's enough chemical composition for things to start forming like crystalline structures to actually grow. And crystals grow very, very rapidly. And they grow according to, well, vibration, and we won't go into that, but they do grow, and they have all these different lattice structures. And then there are other materials up there that, if there are indeed like rocks or any types of minerals up there, they can basically start combining and forming into these meteor type of materials. Okay, so once you have the raw material up there, we also know that what's going on up there in the magnetic fields is the magnetic fields are constantly shifting. We can see that in the stars rotating around and moving around in this electromagnetic field that I've talked about several times in the star field. Also, the magnetic lines of force that either the sun and the moon are riding on, or they are manifesting optically on. Regardless of the fact, these fields are creating a quantum locking condition that at certain times of the year, which is predictable, will change phase just enough where it will dislodge a lot of these minerals and crystals. And when they dislodge, they literally come down through the magnetic lines of flux, and they have discharge arcs between them. So if anybody's ever watched a meteor shower or listened to one, you see the extremely bright lights from the electrical discharges that are happening between the charged part of the upper atmosphere and the minerals / crystals that are coming down through it. Also, because it is an electrical discharge, sometimes you hear this very, very loud, staticky type of sound when they are coming down. So basically what we're saying is the origin of the meteor showers is a combination of the fact that there is already material up there that is quantum locked, and it is growing together with crystal composites from the materials that are in our gaseous upper atmosphere and creating crystals and combining with rocks. And crystals will keep growing until they literally run into something that alters their course. Like, in other words, granite is a composite of several different minerals and crystals as well. And correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, Cami, because I'm just kind of going by what you told me.
You are doing so good, so much better than me, so I want to say thank you.
Okay, so anyway, we're getting these meteors that are coming down to Earth, and when you examine them, we're seeing that they are a little bit mineral, a little bit crystal. They are crystalline, but now the amorphous part, in maybe you can, because that's the part I'm a little weak on.
Okay, when you do, one of the classifications on stones and that is are they crystalline, meaning do they grow? And you can show up the pictures of crystals growing on the screen if you have it, or let me see if I can do that. Or B, is it amorphous? Amorphous material would be like molten lava or something, glass that's melted, and it's going to get its shape from whatever it flows into. In other words, you would have to, if you had it shaped in something, you would mold it. It's going to fill crevices. It's going to, in space, let me bring moldavite, which, oops. It's going to be on a different tab, of course, but in the, in other words, amorphous means it does not have an organized crystal lattice structure. So it's going to take the shape of whatever it has, and it's going to be melted material flowing into it. Now, if something like cooling has a time to, be exposed to the elements, and that crystals are going to grow. They're going to be an additive type of force and actually going to grow. So you have your actual growing crystals or your amorphous material that's like something that's already there and is flowing.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so that's basically, you know, the answer to that question in short. And I'm sure, Kama, we can elaborate that on a little bit more. We're running a little tight on time, but you know, we did want to answer that question as to how that would be possible. It's not a phenomenon of asteroids coming in from outer space, entering our upper atmosphere, and then burning up, so to speak. But it is very much a very normal process of development of minerals that takes place on the Earth. It's replicable in a lab, and you know, again, when you take into consideration that we are an electrical construct, and that these minerals, which have metallic substance in them, are coming down through the atmosphere, there is discharge because of the difference of potential. Difference of static potential as they're coming down, and we can see it by the fact that they light up very bright, and of course part of that may be heat as well as static discharge that's causing part of the light, but it also has the sound, the very electrical crackly sound that would not be commensurate, at least in my opinion, with something that is coming in and actually burning up. If it was burning up, I seriously doubt it would have that electrical crackling sound. So that's kind of our answer in a nutshell, and we will definitely elaborate on that a little bit more. So thank you for that. And again, God, I cannot get over this this donation that we got. That is so wonderful. So, and also, Chris, I wanted to let you know I muted you just a little while ago because you were causing a little bit of echo. So if you do talk, you have to unmute yourself because I can't unmute you. So just FYI, so you know that when I talk to you again on this. So let me stop sharing Cammie's screen.
I take that off. Thank you, Bob, on that. Again, I need to work a little bit on not being so scared.
Don't worry, it's very easy to do. It takes a little bit of getting used to. So, all right, so we're back to this and put it back on me. There we go. All right, so let's move on a little bit from that. What else did I want to talk about? And we are definitely coming up on our 3 hours. Okay. One thing that I wanted to talk about, I didn't get a chance to touch on this 2 weeks ago when I was last on, but I was talking about, because of the fact that the flat Earth does definitely have these magnetic, well, emanations that are controlling not only our, Cammie, can you mute? Okay, not only controlling our compass movements, but they're also very much controlling the star movement in the skies, because these are part of the centripetal and centrifugal lines of force in the sky. And so one thing I wanted to bring up is, or what I was talking about, is that the Creator obviously has this technology, being way further advanced than we are, to be able to make magnets behave in such a way where they are literally part of our construct on flat Earth. And one of the things that I wanted to show is what a certain company called Polymagnet is doing with magnets that is absolutely astounding, in that they are actually able to make magnets make like logical decisions, or they're able to make them act like mechanical devices, and do literally intelligent things by simply manipulating a magnetic field. And what I'm about to show you is the little demo that's put out by Polymagnet that kind of gives a description of their product. And when Cammie and I show our map, and the underlying magnetic construct of it, and we're dealing with basically a 3-pole system, not a 2-pole system, and we have defined that as the magnetic south pole, allegedly, that would be south of Australia, the north pole in the center of the map, and then the South Atlantic anomaly, which of course when you put it on a flat Earth map, on the Gleason's map, they line up in a perfect line, but when we do it on Cammie's map, they kind of give us this slightly offset of 3 magnetic points. So I believe that these fields were intelligently designed specifically for the structure. And if obviously, if we can do it, the creator can do it. And I just wanted to show you guys something that I found amazing and what they're able to do with magnets now. And let's go ahead and just give this little thing a play right here. Oopsie, where's my voice?
Magnetic force goes right through some material.
I'll start over again. There we go.
They have an invisible force that never wears out. Magnetic force goes right through some material and is attracted to others. Magnets come in different materials, simple materials like weak refrigerator magnets to extremely strong rare earth magnets. But you have to use magnets the way they come. The size and shape determine the strength. You can't engineer the way the magnets behave. You can make them smaller, you can make them bigger, or you can use a different material. But their behavior is fixed. Polymagnets are fundamentally different. You can now customize the feel and function of magnets. You can tune a polymagnet to get the mechanical response you want, to get the physical behavior you want, and to get the feel you want. And with more control over the feel of the magnet, you can get the emotional response you want in the end product. You can control the behavior, the functionality of polymagnets, so they do things far beyond simple attract and repel. Polymagnets can act like a spring or a latch. They can precisely align and then repel when rotated. Precise control over the magnetic field means polymagnets can reduce interference. Magnets are now compatible with sensitive electronics, such as a compass in a tablet, and won't erase a credit card. Polymagnets can be engineered with the same level of detail and care that every other aspect of a product is engineered. In the race to design new and differentiated products, polymagnets are an incredible new tool to precisely tune the feel and function of a product.
All right, so there you have it. And I just wanted to show you, that's basically the polymagnet company little blurb, their advertisement, but it is so revealing in what can be done with magnetic fields. And obviously the creator, whoever created this plane, I believe was fully aware of that, because I don't believe that the placement of these magnetic fields was random, because obviously, even in Genesis, when in the Bible, when you look at it, from that specific standpoint, and this isn't the only standpoint, but I reference it because the stars and the planets were made to show us signs and possibly things to be coming. So that tells me that whoever the creator was trying to tell those with eyes to see that certain things will be coming up in this magnetic manifestation, this creation of the creator that gave us this. So again, this is the assumption that I am proceeding on. I might be wrong, but it's my theory, so I'm presenting it, and I certainly am open to other people presenting theirs as well. And I like to highlight other things like that. But as we have said before, there are certain things that we also will be talking about, possibly in the sense of debunking it, much like what we did with Lawrence and Lori's Pac-Man model. And we just don't believe that works, and we don't believe that there's any physics behind that that cause it to work either. And also, and speaking of that, I just found this today. I can't believe it. I'm subscribed to Chris Rock, but he also did about a month ago his own debunking of the Pac-Man map, and he did it in an extraordinary way. Did you see this, Jaron?
Yeah.
Oh, you did.
I was going to try and get on a hangout with Chris and them at the same time, and it never took place. But yeah, Chris did an awesome job in that video. And others, if you want to watch a good video, watch Rendra AZ's latest Sun video, showing how it's something that David Weiss has been talking about for a while, and we've all been trying to explain it in a different way. But basically, the source light being the sun, and it's shining down and then through the atmosphere, that where you're at on Earth, you're going to see a different position of the sun than someone else. So are you looking at the same sun? Well, yeah, it's the same sun, where it's only one, but it is in a different position for a different person because of the way you see it through a lens. Be that a dome, be it the atmosphere, be it a magnetic anomaly, whatever it is, it's a medium that the light has to travel through, and we know the speed of light and the direction of light changes based on the mediums it goes through. And I think it's an excellent video that there it is, called Flat Earth, Equinox, and Solar Eclipse Solved.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, excellent video. Does a good job towards the middle of it of having a guy. Yeah, this guy here is shining through different mediums, and you can see how the light bends and the light changes direction. And he even shows with a upside down pyramid shape or an upside down triangle shape how if the angle of the sun comes in just right, it will actually disappear, meaning the light will hit one side of the triangle, bounce to the other side, and bounce back up, which might be what we see when we look at eclipses. And really excellent video, and this is the kind of thing that we're talking about, great research out there. I never had seen this video before. In fact, I purchased, they had a kit like this on Amazon. It comes with the convex, the concave, the combination of them both, plus a flat mirror, and it comes with a laser pointer and a protractor that fits on there, all for like 21 bucks. But I bought one just because I think that this is very important, the way that light propagates through different mediums. And, this is why when, people on other channels, I don't like talking about people either. It's not important. What's important, though, is that just because you have something that you think debunks a certain model, well, it's good to talk it out with other people and not just go on a rampage of saying how dumb other people are, how they're gatekeepers and they're holding people back. And no, that's great. And look into your theory, look into all your different proofs, try and disprove, try and debunk the current models. But simply because you say, well, we observe two people on the Earth seeing the sun in the same place, well, it doesn't mean that means the sun is traveling in a straight line. It doesn't mean there's a lot that goes into what we're researching. And pretty sure that the last time I checked, the reason we're all in this place is because of dogmas, and it's because other ideas weren't allowed to be expanded on, and so everybody ran through the incorrect world of infinite space, of relativity, and that's basically what the other channel was telling people to do. Completely give up the Gleasons. It's a joke. It's spelled wrong, so the map must be wrong. It was placed here by the government who's trying to fool you, and so you have to follow their diamond map. That's the only correct model, and you can't follow the circle map and anybody presenting it. And it's just ridiculous. That's dogma. That's saying this is correct, nothing else is correct. And if anybody got caught in that, which I've seen tons of comments on their videos, there's people that have got caught in it that say, I can't believe I ever believed in the circle map. It doesn't bother me, because I just feel bad for people that because of what another channel is doing, they've lost the way. And I haven't lost my way. We're going for truth. Like I said, if anybody ever disproves the Gleason's map, believe me, I'll be the first one to say it's been disproved. And I've never claimed it to be the map of the Earth. I've said before that we have a lot of research to do, and in my opinion, I'm a lot more concerned with explaining the differences between the globe and the flat Earth, and the reason why the globe simply is not reality, explaining that the Earth is the center of the universe and all the proofs that surround that, explaining that NASA is a complete and total lie, explaining that SpaceX is no different, showing that space is not what we were all taught. The idea of space itself is just a metaphysical belief. It's not something that can be proven or shown. It's not backed by evidence. It's all backed by math. And when you look at all those things, you should start to see that there's more important things besides, in my opinion at least, besides the map. Because once the world realizes that it's not what we were taught, you'll have 7 billion people who will be dying to find out. And once, instead of giving NASA $20 million a day, or $50 million a day, once that money is going to somebody who actually cares about others and cares about the truth, then we're going to find it all out. So the more important thing to me is getting the point to everyone across that just because you've got some agency that says they're scientific and that they're launching rockets into space doesn't mean that that's true. So I think there's much more involved. I have a video that I had to go back and take some stuff out of, but I have a video coming out about Antarctica, which absolutely unequivocally proves that it is not a continent at the bottom of the globe. It can't be. You look at any kind of the webcam footage, any kind of even the footage you can find on YouTube. Where is the proof of a 24-hour sun in Antarctica? There isn't one. There isn't a video out there that shows a damn shadow going 360 degrees around. Imagine how long video evidence has been out, folks. Imagine how long that we've had the capability of making a movie with a video camera. And why is there the simplest thing in the world, put a stick in the ground, film it for a day, watch the shadow go all the way around. That means the sun went all the way around your head. And yet we don't have that. We have cut up footage. We have edited footage. We've got videos that make no sense. And yeah, is there one from 2015 or 2016 where somebody shows that a professional team did it? Sure, we have that. But what about the previous 50 years of video footage availability? Why would there be no video at all of the sun going around the continent of Antarctica? It's simple. It's not a continent. So that's why I stick to the circle model, because it makes sense to me that Antarctica is a outer barrier. Does it mean that there's not extra space to go places? No. I'm capable of understanding, and you should be capable of understanding, when you have GPS, when you have navigation like the GPS, you are trapped by longitude and latitude and GPS, by the compass, by north, south, east, west, and the compass and the longitude lines and the latitude lines. What's beyond that could be anything. We don't know. We don't know. That's what we have to research, and that's what we have to investigate. So when somebody comes along and just says flat out, nope, it's absolutely a continent, because you can see that people go down there and they would notice if it was a big edge. That's nonsense. They would not notice. That's the way it's set up. It's set up for deception. When you just try and find evidence of the sun going around the continent. Now think of how easy that is. Simple. We see it in the north. The sun goes around your head. You can track it, but there's no evidence of that in Antarctica. Is there evidence of a 24-hour light? Yeah, there's evidence that it stays light. It's not a daylight. It's more of a dawn or a dusk. And there's lots of things that can explain that. But it's certainly not coming from the sun. And so that's a video I have coming out soon. And so, yeah, check out Resray AZ's video. And just know that, Bob and I are not ever going to lie to you. That's the difference between what other people say about us and what we are doing. Is we're researching. We're showing up here on Sundays to talk about what we research and, share videos and other things that we've seen. And that's that. And I promise you, I will never tell you a lie. Will I make mistakes? Absolutely. I'll be the first to admit that. I tell people all the time, don't trust me. That's what got us into this problem. Do your own research. But I'm trying to show you my research because it's a double check for me. It's putting it out there to kind of open it up to peer review, if you will. And this way, if I'm saying something wrong or I looked over something incorrect or somebody else has other evidence, or then bring it to the table. And not by making 3-hour shows where you just call us shills and gatekeepers and present no evidence that supports what you're saying, because we'll just ignore it. And I'm glad Bob said for season 3 we'll do that, because I agree it's about the research. It's about pointing out to people we don't live where we were taught, and that's a pretty big freaking deal. It's something as simple as Antarctica. Point that out to everybody that we've been lied to about what's going on down there. And that's a big freaking problem, because we shouldn't be being lied to, especially when it's something as big as where we live. And once people all realize that, then we kick out the people in charge now, put people in there. Like I said, make me in charge of NASA tomorrow. You can bet your ass in one day we'll know the truth. That's the difference between what we're living with now and what we could be living with if everybody stood up and started fighting for truth. And if people that are against us, the Reds rhetorics and the flat earth math and these guys, if they just turned around and said, you know what, NASA, yeah, why don't you prove these things? Why don't you go send a rover to the moon? Whoa, sorry, we're having an air show over here. Why don't you go to the moon? Why don't you show us the next lunar eclipse from the moon? And if they started demanding those things, what's the worst that could happen? Either NASA's going to prove to everyone that they've been telling the truth the whole time, and then you get your wish that we look like fools, or you're deathly afraid of the ulterior, which is that you find out that your precious NASA has been fooling you and taught you lies, and that's the last thing you'll allow. And that's pretty sad, because you're allowing the whole world to be lied to.
Yep, absolutely. And so he's talking about Render AZ here, and this is another one I kind of want to highlight. This is his newest one, and this goes back to something else that, if you don't want to talk about flat earth necessarily, You know, these are indirect proofs. Rendra titles his video "Reason to Believe Flat Earth." It's part of a reason to believe flat Earth, but it's more of a reason to believe that NASA is lying about everything. And these are indirect proofs, because again, if what NASA is telling us is legitimate, then why are they faking this stuff? Why are they, you know, he's showing here all the photoshopped evidence, point blank, all the anomalies. This is really a good video for doing this. And people can look into this stuff. And like I said, this is what got me here, is because I could not figure out, long before I was a flat earther, I was looking at NASA with a very critical eye, because I came from the Simon Shack Clues Forum crowd, who have done a beautiful job debunking virtually everything NASA has ever done. Are they flat earthers? No way. In fact, they are stringently against it. And I'm hopeful that someday Simon will, you know, see the truth behind that. But they certainly know what's going on with NASA and all the fakes, just like what we're seeing right here. Look at all the fake cloud stamping and you know, all the fake things that they do to the big blue marble picture and all the things that they're officially supposed to be official images. You have got to question stuff like this, people, and we certainly are. And this is what led me to Flat Earth, was realizing that now NASA is just a big bunch of liars in every way, shape, and form. And of course, since I have become a Flat Earther, and Jaron and I have been doing this show, and we scrutinize, believe me, between the two of us, we probably looked at more NASA stuff than NASA has. And it's just, it's absolutely absurd. And anybody that can't see this is either severely suffering from cognitive dissonance, or they're just straight up shilling for NASA. And I don't see any other way around that, because it's too blatant, it's too obvious, going back to all the professional forensic analyses that have been done on the Apollo footage. The joke of the LEM that supposedly went there, and then look at all the excuses are made. Oh, NASA had to, you know, conserve weight, so that's why they made it out of cardboard and aluminum foil. It's like, get real.
Yeah, I really think that if you at this point believe in NASA, then there's a lot of assumptions that one can make about you, and that's that you're afraid of being called stupid, you're afraid of not being with the in crowd, you're a follower, not a leader. You have bad self-esteem problems. You aren't capable of research. You'd rather defer to science. I can make all those assumptions about somebody who follows NASA simply because they refuse to do the research, because they're thinking in their head, well, Jaron is just some idiot. Bob is just some nobody. These guys couldn't possibly know more than the entire scientific world, and therefore I'm just going to believe what science says. And that's fantastic, but just realize that that's what you've been taught, that's what you've been trained to believe, and what is wrong with doing the research. And I think that everybody knows why they don't want to do the research, who won't do it, and that's because they have a fear that they're going to become just like all of us, which is we all thought Flat Earth was stupid. I yelled at my wife. I'm sure, you know, Bob said a time or two, oh, this is ridiculous. Just like Mark Sargent says he thought it was ridiculous. Everybody who has looked into this went through the process of thinking this is absolutely a joke. And when you look into it, it becomes evident. And then all of the conspiracies that you've ever researched in your life, everything kind of falls into place. It all kind of makes sense. The reason we don't get pictures of the Earth, the reason that, you know, there's never, anybody has never gone back to the moon, all these things just unfold right in front of you. And then you're stuck in a position where, like Bob said, maybe you don't want to say it's flat because you aren't ready to make that jump yet. Well, that's fine. The reason I made that jump is because why was I taught that flat Earth was stupid? Why was I taught that flat Earth was an ancient desert wandering belief? And why was I taught the globe was absolute proven fact with all this evidence that backed it? When I went looking, there's no evidence of it. And when I looked at the flat Earth, it's a viable theory. It's something that has a lot of evidence that backs it. Therefore, I can put two and two together and say, well, this is why I think you're lying to us. And here's the proofs that show it. And I go out and measure things and test 4 miles of ocean and see no curve. And everything that we do is just showing me more and more every day. Look at Antarctica, like I said, that there's a big problem. And it doesn't matter if 100,000 people or 100 million people think something is the truth. If one person knows the truth, that one person is more important. And it doesn't matter how smart those 100,000 are, or those million or 100 million. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they think. It doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter how stupid they call that one person. The truth is the truth, and I'm going to keep fighting for it.
Yep, absolutely. And there's one other reason to keep promoting NASA and believing in NASA as well, and that would be if you named your kids Mars, Andromeda, and Mercury.
You don't know anybody who did that, do you?
I do, yes.
No.
And I may be wrong on the Mercury, but I know Mars and Andromeda are correct. Flat Earth Math Charles, he and his wife are both science majors, and he told me in chat yesterday that he actually named his kids that.
Want to hear
And
something
I'm
really
like,
sad?
no wonder you're shilling for NASA.
About 5 years ago or 6 years ago, when Miss and I were talking about our first kid, we had thought about Mars. It was definitely in the top 3. That was before we found any of this, but Mars was definitely in the top 3.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I told Charles, I love the name Andromeda for a girl. That's awesome. But yeah, he actually said he named his kids that, and I'm like, oh, no wonder you're shilling for NASA. But Charles, love you, man. I mean, I just have to take that shot and give you a hard time. But that's that's awesome. It's kind of like Frank Zappa naming his kids Dweezil and Moon Unit, right? Just interesting names. Love it. Anyway, so and also I wanted to highlight again some really neat experiments and stuff. Again, our friend Ephesians 6:12, his newest video shows some really neat experiments that are in his newest video. So I would advise everybody to go check that out. Very cool stuff. Love it. Oh, got to give it a thumbs up. There we go. And yeah, so I think that's it for that. Let me whip through my tabs really quick. Again, one more time. Let's see where that is at. You are muted. So say again. Oh my God, it keeps going up.
And people are asking again for your PayPal one, saying I think it's because I put the Jaren isn't in there. But are you sure that's the right one for the PayPal, the Bob at Denver Network?
Yes, it is the right one, the Bob at Denver Network.
That's where I sent the first batch.
Okay, I think the problems people are having is because I put Bob at Jeranism at some point and I confused him only on one thing, so I'm sorry about that.
Okay,
hey, let me mention something too that I don't know if people know this, but I think it's important, and maybe people don't thumbs up videos for another reason or something. But just so you guys know, if the way that the algorithm works for Google, that when somebody makes a video, that Google will push it into other people's recommended videos, as long as you stay above the 90% like mark. So if it gets below 90% to where you have, let's say, 80 likes and 15 dislikes, they stop pushing that video. And for as many people as I see in comments, and I'll put out a video, let's say it's got 4,000 views and it might have 100 likes. And either people don't like the video, which is fine. If you don't like a video, please don't thumbs up it. That's how us as creators, that's how I know whether I'm doing quality videos that people like, or if I should kind of change it up or something. But if you like a video, please, as soon as you start liking it, hit that thumbs up. It's more important than I think people realize. And I think some people might just hee-haw, it doesn't matter. Oh, it's just a little contest or whatever, but it actually matters a lot. And I could even show you evidence to where videos that are above that 10% mark for me, or 90% likes, are the ones that have 200 and 300,000 views, and the ones that don't are at 20,000 views. And some of those videos are what I feel are some of my best. And the fact that they have 20,000 views or 30,000 views just tells me that people stopped liking them, and when they are not getting that high rate of likes, then they stop getting pushed. So it's just something I hope that people understand. It doesn't take but 1 second to just pop down there, hit that thumbs up. Don't like a video if you don't like it, but if you do, I hope you know how much that helps get the word out even further, because then, Google nobody's sitting at a computer reviewing videos. It's an algorithm that simply wants to push videos that people like and wants to not push videos that people don't like. So if you allow, and I don't know if you've seen my videos, but there's people that are subscribed to me that as soon as I put a video out, even if it's a 20-minute video, 5 minutes later, it's got 8 dislikes. And that's because there's people who obviously care so much about disliking my videos that they're subscribed. So as soon as I put one out, they quickly go and dislike it. And those may be people that know the algorithm. So they know that by keeping me below that 10%, it's not going to get pushed out to people's recommended. And so it's a little thing that people can do to really help push the truth. And again, don't like videos you don't like, because that's not what we want going out there. If you don't think I did a good job, don't like it. And that's how I'll judge him. But if you do like it, please hit the like.
Yes, absolutely. And the same goes for Globebusters.
Absolutely.
For example, today we had several dislikes before we even started. And that's happening, that's happening to a lot of people where, you just have the haters that come out just simply to do that. And that does indeed, when you go under that 90-1 or 10-1 type thing, 9-1, excuse me, then it does not get promoted on Google as well. And we're trying to get Flat Earth promoted. But
if there's 400 people watching live, in my opinion, at least 250, I would assume, are enjoying what we're saying. And so there should be 250 likes. It takes 2 seconds to just go and hit that thumbs up. And so I don't know what we have now, but I'm guessing it's a lot lower than 250. So that's kind of what we're talking about, that if you could please just take that 10 seconds, it helps a ton, because then they'll keep pushing that video out to people, and hopefully we can spread the word so that more people can realize what's going on.
Yep, absolutely. All right, cool. And also about Ephesians 6:12, when I got a private message from him this week, he made it a big point to say a new video from Ephesians and Mrs. Ephesians. So Ephesians, if you just got married, congratulations. I think that's awesome. So just wanted to give you a shout out there. And if not, well, congratulations anyway. So there you have it.
And a birthday wish to Hilda De Beer Truter. She's having a birthday today, Facebook friend. Always reposts stuff, always says nice things, kind things of Globebusters and myself. So happy birthday.
All right, beautiful. Okay, and then in other news, there is some more North Pole footage of the sun going around in a circle that was just released this week by Tet's Truth Tube. I'm sure you all know Tet. Tet's Truth Tube has been around for a long, long time, since before I was ever on YouTube. And he is in Norway, and he and a buddy of his took the time to do a 360-degree shot of the sun from up in Norway. And they did miss the very last part of it because the battery on the camera died. But it's pretty conclusive that the sun is going around in a circle. It's not a hard one to tell. So you may want to check that out. And I think that is about it for me.
I did want to mention, just because I know people always say, well, what's the proof of the, if you look at the flat map, and I've said this before, I understand that you can do the morphing between the east and the west. That makes sense. But the question I've asked, and I haven't seen an answer yet, is if you leave from New York heading north, that you come out above Russia. So if you're going New York to, let's say, Moscow, when that plane morphs into the coming out above Russia, where's the video evidence of, let's say the sun is on the left side of a plane, you're flying out the portal, you see the sun on your left, in a heartbeat, you should see the sun on your right. So that would be the disproof of the free energy map, which has never been explained to me. I understand the right-left, that works fine, but it's not a map. Even when you look at the Mercator map, the Mercator projection, a lot of people look at that and think that if you go out the top, you come out the bottom. And that's not the way it works. If you go out the left side, you'll come out the right, or go out the right side, you'll come out the left. But on the top and bottom, if you go out the bottom, you come back the bottom, but just over to the side. So that's actually Pac-Manning. That's actually morphing. It's not something that can be described in another way. Same thing if you go north out of New York to start heading towards the North Pole. We know they don't go right over the North Pole. They go around it. But you would have to come back on the Mercator projection coming down into Russia. And so, there should be evidence of that. Would be an instant change of the sun jumping from one side of the plane to the other. And that's why I don't look at the free energy map anymore. It doesn't make sense to me, because we don't see that in reality.
Yep, there you go. And also one other thing, in an upcoming show, we're going to be debunking the Flat Earth Debunk Visualization video by David Ridlin. I don't know if you've seen this or not, Jaron, but he does have, most of it's a mess, to be honest with you, but there is one particular point that made me stand up and take notice, and that would be this particular section here. We do have an explanation for this, and I will be going into this in a future episode of Globebusters, where we kind of break this down. The rest of the video is quite easy to debunk, but there are a couple parts that are going to require a little bit more explanation. And again, like I said, I don't shy away from this stuff because I am that confident in the flat Earth that all anomalies can be explained, and in a far better way than the globe Earth can. So I must say that there are a couple parts of this particular video that have some very interesting points. I would encourage everybody to go take a look at it, and then look forward for our response to it on a future Globebusters, because I live for this stuff. I love to see stuff like this because it forces me to look closer at our model, and that's why I've never backed away from the Southern Star footage. In fact, I just integrated it right into our model, and I think in a very plausible way that can be done. So yeah, if you got something that you think debunks us, send it to us. I'll certainly look at it. I mean, I'm not going to highlight it or anything, but if it raises enough question in my mind that it needs to be explained, and in my opinion, this particular video has a few facets to it that need to be explained in our model, then I will do so. But believe me, I'm not afraid of this stuff at all.
No, and that's what people should recognize, is we're looking for the truth. I would never shy away from anything that disproves what we're saying, because that's the whole point of this. And even if you listen to us describe this, I mean, Bob and I even have differing opinions on this particular issue. I'm sure Bob still believes in a physical moon and a physical sun, and as of right now, I don't. I think that the sun is a reflection, and I think that the moon is probably some sort of reflection itself, or some sort of non-physical item. So
well, I'm halfway there, Jaron. I agree that the sun is a reflection. I'm still on the fence about the moon, though.
Yeah, and even if it is the moon, a lot of people say, well, what's holding it up there? And again, who told us, who said that the things in the celestial sky need to live by the laws that we live by on Earth? It's something that we just have been told, and that we believe through science, that since everything falls to the Earth, the moon must be falling to the Earth, and we must be falling around the sun. And these things are just words. There is no proof. There is no proof. I saw a post on Facebook today. There's a $100,000 challenge to prove that the Earth goes around the sun. And guess what? It can't be proven. You have every major physicist, other than Lawrence Krauss and those people. But I mean, the good ones out there are fully able to admit. Even Einstein admitted, and others, that there is no test that can prove that the Earth goes around the sun. And what George Ellis says is that what people need to realize is that science bases some of its answers on philosophical terms, not by evidence and observation. And what that means, if you can't understand that, is that there's a certain answer that means God can't exist, and there's a certain answer that means that he can. And believe me, science will always go the direction that means he can't be proven, because it throws a wrench in the entire thing that they've set up. So don't be surprised when you realize that science makes its decisions based on philosophical reasons. So that's why there's a Big Bang. That's why we go around the sun. That's why we spin. That's why we're going with the galaxy at 480,000 miles per hour and going around the great attractor at 2.2 million miles per hour. Where is there evidence of a great attractor? Where is there evidence of something 100 quadrillion times the size of the sun that we all go around? There is no evidence of that. It's words, and that's not science. Science is evidence. It's based on observations that can be repeated. Who can repeat anything in space? Who repeats anything? The entire study of the skies is based on numbers and facts given to you by NASA and the world governments who have space agencies. That's it. Nobody's ever gone to space, not Richard Branson, not Jeff Bezos, not anybody. Nobody's ever sent a human being to space besides Roscosmos, JAXA, NASA. That's it. So when you realize that these governments have an easy way to steal money, they don't have your best interest at heart, then it should be easy to realize that it's not that much of a stretch to realize that they could be lying about it. And you can't go test it, and I can't go test it. So why are we all believing it? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So excellent. Sounds like we have wrapped up yet another show, and
Oh, 3:33. That's it, Mason.
Is it 3:33? Oh, well, that's 4:36 here. Your clock's off. Anyway, all right. So yeah, we will be back next week for our season finale, and hopefully we will have some wonderful balloon footage to be showing you at that time. And yeah, I mean, this is so exciting because we are funded now, and honestly, like I said, we will account for every penny of this, and whatever money we do not use, we will either, you know, I don't know what we'll do with it, but we will keep it around for other experiments, or if somebody really is in dire straits of having part of it back, you know, we'll figure out what to do with that. But I don't think that's going to happen, and I really, really appreciate everybody that has donated. So before we get out of here, I'm going to kick it around for one last, the final word from everybody, and I'll kick it over to Cammie because she looks like she has something to say. So go ahead, sweetheart.
Oh, I just wondered what the chat room thought, that if there was enough extra to maybe bring Jaren out for the launch.
That would be nice. I don't think that would be looked upon very well. As much as I would love to do that.
Yeah, and I said that as a joke because my wife, I don't want to leave her alone either. So,
right.
You know, but I mean, I'm open to do anything, but I'm just putting it out there that I made it sound like
Yeah.
it would just be me, and I don't really want to leave her here like that.
Yeah, but absolutely, we will not be using any of the donated money for anything like that. But it's a nice thought, but I don't think that the community would think too highly of that idea, and I honestly couldn't blame them, because let's face it, there's all kinds of neat things that we want to be able to do. For example, you know, some of the magnetic experiments, we may be able to use this for some of the magnetic experiments that we want to do, or some other future experiment. Lord knows we're going to be able to figure stuff out, especially if we actually start a research group. Then, you know, if we can get funding for that, that's wonderful. And that's kind of where I want to, you know, put that money for research, because that's what we're about. We're about research, and you know, the community is going to be part of this.
I'm not going to help that experiment by being there. So I think it's more important that we save that for research, and I hope to meet you guys soon. Hopefully you come out in the next couple months. But at least I got that off my bucket list. I met a flat earther. Thanks, Dwayne, for coming by and launching that balloon.
Awesome. Okay, and Chris, before you respond, you have to unmute your microphone. So just go up to the top. You'll see the little microphone button. You unmuted it. Beautiful. All right, Chris. So any last words you want to say before we wrap this up?
Sure. One of the things I'd like to say, is it easier to take a picture with your camera, or is it easier to create one on your computer? People need to ask themselves that. Much easier just to go out and take a picture and say, here it is, than it is to sit for hours and create a fake one on a computer.
Boy, that is for absolute sure, especially for people like me that don't know how to use Photoshop.
Yeah, and then, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, Dwayne just texted me to tell you guys to buy more helium than you think you'll need. And says the 300 bottle, even though a 250 could do a 2,000 gram balloon. And he says, make sure you calculate the weight of your balloon and the ascent rate of 5 meters per second, and make sure the balloon of 1,200 grams is enough to carry our load, which I'm sure you guys are doing. But just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure that, or at least I would hope, maybe, and I'll ask, maybe if we need any guidance or advice or anything like that, that maybe we could call upon Dwayne, since he obviously launches these balloons quite a bit. He would be the most expert person that I've even heard of, and you know him, so maybe if we need to use him as a resource, maybe we could get in contact with him.
Absolutely.
So that would be awesome. Even though, like I said, Chris has done a lot of research on this, and I've done some research, not nearly to the degree that Chris has. Chris, like I said, got to give it up for Chris. He's done a magnificent job. He's really taken this by the horns and gotten the job done. And now we are funded, and I am so excited. This is just going to be awesome.
Yeah, me too. And thanks again for everybody that has donated. And yes, we're going to order, we're going to have more helium than we need, for sure.
Okay, good deal. So we will do our best to do it upright, and we will seek out all the advice if we are even in minor doubt about something, because I certainly don't want to, have this $1,500, $2,000 balloon not work after all the donations and all the work. So we will absolutely do our best to make this work right the first time, and hopefully luck will be on our side and we'll get the job done. So all right, Jaron, you got anything else before we wrap it up?
I can't think of anything. Somebody just said in the chat, put Jaron in the balloon. That's rude.
Well, this whole place sucks. That's right, it sucks.
That's right, Rodney. You tell them. Beautiful. All right, everybody. We will get out of here. We'll see you next week for our Globebuster season finale and our balloon footage. And like I said, again, if you want to attend, email Cami at Jeranism.com, CAMI at Jeranism.com. And we will certainly make sure you are aware of the location and the time and all that stuff. We are planning on it being the 30th. With as long as everything is good weather-wise for that date, we will definitely proceed. And if there is any delay for any reason, which would be weather, of course, most likely, we will certainly let everybody know. But if you want to attend, we'd be more than happy to have you. The more the merrier. So with that, we'll get out of here. And thank you so much, everybody, again. We really appreciate it. We have got a magnificent community, and we love you all. So be good to each other. Don't lie to each other. Open your mind. There is truth inside. Peace out, everybody.
Love you.
Peace, everyone. Thanks.